Okay, we're live, JP. We're live.
Hey, brother, how's it going?
Good yourself, man. Yourself. How have you been, anyways?
Good, man. Good. It's only been like what 2 weeks since we last spoke, and so much has happened. It's a different world, man. In those 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. That's the thing. Actually, I'm not sure if I mentioned it during the last time we were having live stream. Actually, let me just bring this off here for now. Where is that? Remove for? Wait, wrong one. Sorry, this one. Move this for now. Anyways, but yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I say, even if I go back all to the early days of 2008 or so, or the financial crisis, I even back then I thought, man, this is going to be the precipice. This is going to be where people are really going to get, woken up, like, not the woke, but awaken, like the red
Sure.
pill. Everyone's going to get red pilled now because for sure, I mean, it's no matter what side of the political divide or aisle you're on, surely this is going to get everyone woken up. And initially, I kind of thought was the case because especially with the Wall Street, this is something I was actually talking to the wife about. So even with the Occupy Wall Street thing, and I was just kind of spitballing and thinking through this stuff, but ever since then, actually, the crazy part is back then, so after the financial crisis, there was a huge block of people, and they seemingly came out from everywhere. And I thought it was great because it seemed very grassroots. So you had people like your Antifa types, right? You had your socialist types, you had libertarians, you had anarchists from both. You had everybody out there that were protesting all this, the financial crisis because they perceived it, the system was rigged, for the connected, the ruling class, the wealthy, and all that stuff. And like I say, that kind of started this whole big thing. But what I noticed over the years, and I watched so many other events happen, where it's like, well, shit, that should even bring us more together. But I think what happened, and once again, this is just me speculating. I can't say I have any proof whatsoever. This is 100%, the reasoning behind all the difference in how things have played out since then. But I firmly believe. So I use like my own personal anecdotal experience. Then I try to extrapolate that and expand that out to like society on the level. And I think so in my family, on my mother's side of the family, you got a lot of people who work for the government. On my father's side, not so much. But when you think about the kind of people that, would be your typical leftists during Occupy Wall Street, these are people, like I say, were Antifa types. But a lot of them, as far as I'm concerned, seem like they would have been the children, right? Of some very, very wealthy, some very well connected, politicians for sure. And they were disgruntled because they weren't getting what they wanted, right? Maybe mom and dad were saying, no, you got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Meanwhile, they were getting the bailout. So maybe that's why these kids. But I noticed, anyways, where I'm going with this, I'm trying to speed this up. I noticed a great divergence, and it seemed like the only one left after a while, anyways, seemed to be people like myself. It seemed like the voices got tamped down quite a lot. And I can't help but think, well, of course, a lot of the, propaganda, the free speech suppression, all that stuff definitely quieted, the threats, right? People just worrying about their own thing. But a large swath of them, I firmly believe, got bought off. A lot of the Antifa types, right? Or the so-called progressives, which are a lot of them, because this is just the true in most people's lives. If mom and dad works for government, chances are they're probably going to raise you and educate you that you're probably going to want to go into government too, right? It's kind of carrying on that thing in a lot of households. And a lot of them, I think their politicians or their mommy and daddy or whoever it was bought them off. So you don't hear like anymore. Even now when I see things like Anonymous would have been considered back in the day, kind of, I assumed like somewhat progressive, but it was kind of a little all over the place. But now instead of being against government, this big giant,
here's my theory on the whole thing, man. I'm 41, so when 2008 happened, I was a good age. I was in my 20s, my early 20s. Very, very much would consider myself of the left back then. Right. But I think it was 2008 was a seminal moment, not just for the market crash and the housing thing and all that. Like just culturally, I think a lot of people started to wake up to some of these systems of governance and how they work, specifically the monetary system and fiat currency. People like Peter Joseph blew up. He was the dude that did the Zeitgeist movement.
Yeah,
but everyone was paying attention, and I think this is my personal. This will be my theory, and it's conjecture on my behalf. And I've heard other people utter this too. Dave Smith is known for this one. But I think that the establishment co-opted a lot of this movement. And I think they started to sell it back to us. Number one, who ends up becoming president, like KRS-One, who was a famous hip hop artist.
I remember KRS-One. Yep, for sure.
He said like America was on the precipice of change. Something big was happening, and everyone could feel it. And then what happened? He said they put a black dude in there, and America just collectively went like, like what do you do now? We're so obsessed with identity. So there's a black dude in there. Well, black is of the oppressed class, so he must be good. And it definitely killed a lot of the momentum that way. Plus, Obama was a great statesman. He was a good orator, great speaker. After George W., who definitely played stupid, but we won't get into that. After his long diatribes, it was refreshing to see someone who could actually articulate themselves. But I seen this happen. That's when, like, ideological subversion, you and I have touched on this before. I think we're being conditioned by different, like, manipulated by different aspects of media and Hollywood. That's obvious. It's been happening for a long time. But that's when we really started to be inundated with a lot of these woke, what's referred to as woke or super progressive left ideas. Yeah, it's really out of the realm of postmodernism. Like, there is no truth. Everything's subjective. There's no objective truth. That's when you can then interpret gender as an abstraction. And then what's my subjective interpretation of my gender might be different. It really is. It's almost like the inevitable conclusion of where a lot of postmodernist philosophy ends. It's like no one can agree with anyone. There's no congruency between each other's worldviews. But I think it was done intentionally. I think oh,
for sure.
I think 2008 really scared the establishment, and they started to look into ways to get a hold of this, and then do divisive tactics too, like the division amongst us all. Everyone's worrying about what tribe they're in and worrying about putting a label on themselves. Like, it's funny. While the left is obsessed with gender and that kind of identity, racial identity, the right is also a little concerned with racial identity presently, the bad aspects of the right. But we're obsessed with political identity. I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I'm a classical liberal or a conservative. Or it's just like everything's changing so fast. It's hard to keep track of that, let alone where you fit in it. We're all just trying to interpret something that's far broader than we are, and we have this finite perspective and limited way we could do so. Clearly, there's some nefarious things going on politically that are pushing us in certain ways, and that's what I think happened. And I honestly, 2008, I think, was when the establishment really started to push us in these ways, push us towards division, have us fighting over. Like the transgender thing, as contentious of an issue as it is, I know it's not going to last because it's nonsensical. There's no science there. There really isn't. It seemed like a distractionary tactic. So how can they keep this hustle going on? Hey, well, let's have the plebs argue about something that seems really vital, and that's what we're seeing. And a lot with the racial division. You know what,
JP, actually, I'm glad you brought up the trans thing, because actually I was thinking about that too. Well, I think about it fucking things all day, all night long, even in the middle of my sleep sometimes. But the trans thing, I got to think about that as a Gen Xer. It's like, what the fuck? That is definitely started up as a divide and conquer methodology, because when I was growing up, without the pundit class, right? Without Hollywood at the time, the pundit class and the people in politics who realize how good that is for their bottom line in terms of creating that divide and conquer thing. Is I remember people like Boy George was a big thing, and you know what? Boy George was even out and came out, and this would have been not long after the whole big AIDS thing. But I don't remember anyone when I was growing up, other than the odd person that maybe laugh at the fact maybe he wore makeup, maybe or something, or some of the crazy clothes. But I never heard anyone fucking saying, "Oh, we got to really go against Boy George because he dresses like like a girl or something." No, because the thing is, the culture, the mindset at the time when I was growing up we had that live let live mentality, right? That was the thing. So the fact that now and considering the people that are pushing all this shit are progressives, are they considering progress now to take us back to the days where now we do have to be overly concerned with how people want to dress and try to create it a wedge issue?
It's exactly what we're seeing too. We're seeing this with the racial division too.
Yeah.
What is the new thing in college campuses across the West is segregation. Like, man, people fought to alleviate it. But now it's willful, right? It's like, we want black only spaces or white only spaces. It's like, that's not the way, guys. This is just simply not the way. And the worst part is presently, I'm a conservative. Like I said, I'm more of the libertarian conservative. But I believe in more. I wouldn't classify myself as a straight libertarian, but I'm definitely not an authoritarian conservative.
Right.
You're seeing a lot of people come out on the right now that are Christian nationalists, or even worse, ethnocentric. Like that they want a white Canada and stuff, and I can't have nothing to do with that. I just think that's the exact same reductive philosophy on both sides. Like the worst thing to do to a human being is to reduce them to their immutable characteristics, like a skin color, and then group them or categorize them. It's pernicious to me, and it's illogical. And I'm a firm advocate that we really have to get back to merit and character. Overall, and I really don't like these guys. These are the dudes that they got a juice explanation for everything. You stubbed your toe in the middle of the night and somehow it was the Jews. It's shocking to see, but you see this, you encounter this identitarianism on both sides of the political spectrum. And that's a big backwards move. But the transgender issue, now I wrote an article regarding this. It's called Sex is Gender.
Okay.
I did some research. Again, I have no credentials. I'm just a discerning citizen that happens to be paying attention. But I researched this because I found this really disconcerting and I couldn't understand it. So I find the best way for me to clarify my perspective on a given issue is to actually put 1,500 words down and see where I'm at. So I really liked where I got this. I kept it short. I wanted to really give a conclusive overview for people that are unfamiliar with the nuance to it, how it works, where it came from, the postmodernist origins. Now, there was always gender dysphoria or gender dysmorphia. Now they call it gender incongruence. The nomenclature is always changing. But this happened, man, and this is a real disorder that some people suffer with. It's a very rare thing. And a lot of these people do actually find it more comfortable. Like people were transgender since the beginning of time, not transgender, like transsexual. And there's a lot of these people like Blair White. She's a famous conservative commentator. And Blair White, it's a trans person. Like Blair was born a dude, but he doesn't. She or he. I'll call her she for the matter that I don't disrespect that, and I don't want to make it hard for anyone. But what's different? We have to separate these people, these transsexual people that have had existed for a long time, from this new thing, this concept of gender being an abstraction. And when we're teaching this to our children, and we really are, this is being taught to our children in Canada. It's radical, but it's inundating them with this flawed, this fallacious worldview. So then, man, I remember being a kid. It was confusing enough. Trying to figure out what to do, and you're a young man, and what should you do? Like now, like throwing all of this nonsense on them, and that's what it is. I got absolutely no time for it. And once anyone really reads the literature associated with these theories, it's just instantly dismissible. It's junk philosophy, and it's born out of junk philosophy. It's so saddening as a Canadian. Like when I look at your province, New Brunswick, and Susan Holt, and the fact that, man, look at what we're going through in Canada right now. And this woman makes it a priority. And an actual priority for her to change the laws after what Higgs did to make it now legal for these people to push your children down this. It's worse than grooming. I think people they think grooming is a contentious term. I think it's worse than grooming. I think it's ideological subversion. You're brainwashing children into fallacious worldviews.
Yeah. Well, you know what, JP?
Abuse, man.
Yeah, it is. And when you talk about this, the gender dysmorphia or body dysmorphia, the fucking hilarious part about this is wild. I was reading a CBC article, I think it was last week. It was wild to me. It's like, surely even people that watch CBC And yeah, I do it just like CBC Watcher on X. I do it so you folks don't have to.
Yeah.
I report on their insanity. I put up with their bullshit so you folks don't have. But anyways, but it was so fucking funny. This article was literally, and they used the terminology which almost knocked me out my seat about gender dysmorphia. But no, it wasn't towards trans people. No, it's for people like myself or my son who like to get physically in shape, you know. And now, no, I'm fine with that. I'm not even saying that's not even a real thing, that it might be, you know, guys that just work out because they have something in their mind, just like with, you know, anorexic people, right? They think they're like fat when they're like 80 pounds. So
anorexia is the best. It's the best example, because when an anorexic individual is diagnosed, the prognosis is not to affirm their perception of themselves.
No,
it's to put their perception of themselves in perspective, and to help these individuals come to terms with that. Now, in the end, man, like I say, there's a lot of high functioning people with gender dysphoria. They've existed forever. And there were even popular ones, but this is not what happened here. And again, who knows if it was intentional? I don't think it was organic. But now we're reinterpreting sex as gender. And gender as an abstraction. That's just bullshit.
But where I was going with that, JP, is that, you know, people would, even myself, humans are fallible and they make mistakes. I could even lean on the side of it's error or caution, the fact that maybe just some personalities in CBC, you know, got some things wrong. But the fact that, once again, the fact that you will, I'll read CBC article after CBC article where their pundits and their media personalities, and there's only so many of them that deal with certain topics or subject matter, but they will go to great lengths to deny gender dysmorphia or whatever the hell you call it there for the trans people, and bend over backwards to try to make it seem like actually to grow up as a boy and decide that, you know, one day you decide you want to cut your junk off and become a girl. They try to play that as this, that's as normal as breathing. But yet the thing to me, and that shows me that it's not just a matter of incorrect reporting or people bringing just bias.
They're pernicious. It's state-sponsored media.
That just makes it glaringly obvious to me is, that seems to be intentional, right? That's I think why most people today, because I think a lot of Canadians, especially, you know, a lot of Canadians who identify like yourself or even myself when I was younger, as people that would consider at least liberal to a degree, I think we all kind of, you know, fell for this idea for a long time that, you know, that these people have the right intentions, and, you know, but we're seeing today that is so far from the truth. And that's the part that I think is most disturbing, is there's not enough people in this country that realize it's not even just a matter of misinformation. You're talking about some nefarious people, some that are just useful idiots, but there's some nefarious actors out there that are pushing some fucking crazy shit.
There is behind the scenes. Here's the scary part about the gender dysphoria, or just the gender craze, the gender ideology. A lot of the people that are pushing this are well-meaning people. They have an issue with what's referred to as like reflexive empathy or pseudo-moralism. Right. So they adopt these pseudo-moralistic causes because that's now a way for them to virtue signal and validate themselves as being ethically superior. You follow me? It's literally, so these people are, and it comes from a petty place. It's really tragic to see, but they adopt these causes like, I support trans rights, and that then is again, it's the epitome of pseudo moralism. They're able to now perceive themselves as being more ethical just for taking this political stance. That is the stance of the day. I support the current thing meme type of a thing, right? And you encounter these people all the way. They have no idea of their position on it, and I guarantee you, these people, when this and the pendulum is swinging back with the gender ideology, because it is so fallacious. I just knew it was inevitable. We're seeing it now. These same people that are advocating for this, these trans allies and all this stuff, they will forget that they supported this so vehemently because it's going to go the other way. Well, this was very detrimental. This was a wrong turn to interpret it this way. Some people, a very small percentage of the population do struggle with gender identity for legitimate psychological causes. But I mean, gender in and of itself is a binary. What science indicates is that we're mammals, and all mammalian life is sexually dichotomous. We have males and females, the presence or absence of gametes in a chromosomal profile. That's what science says. So when they say it's based in science, it's not. You call them out on it. And the best way, I say straight up, It's predicated upon fallacious postmodernist philosophical frameworks. Now that's a mouthful of nerd, but I mean, it sincerely is, man. Like, that's the science aspect of it. They're talking about it as an abstraction or a social construct. It's nonsense. It's ludicrous. But that's where we are, right? That's one aspect of the culture war, right? And then, is it organic or is it something to keep us distracted? So considering it, let's put that in the distraction pile, and let's go on to Canada for a minute here, because I want to talk about what's happened in Canada the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Now you look. Here's the play: the globalists, the Liberal NDP alliance. Clearly, there's corporate globalists pulling the strings there. But what's happening is Carney wants it. So Carney's going to put himself in here. He's inserted himself into this political insanity that's occurring in Canada, and he's trying to sell himself. Obviously, I feel he's going to get the nod. I think he outranks them in the WEF. He's a literal globalist banker. So he's going to get in. Already, Jagmeet Singh is posturing that indicates he's going to continue to support whoever the Liberal leader is, because he wants to keep what he calls millionaire bootlicker Pierre out of government, right? So he's already posturing to take this stance. So
Maserati driving Jagmeet, right?
Yeah, Carney will be appointed. Jagmeet will support him. So they have at least until March 30th, whenever this goes down. So, till October 2025, before our election is called. The whole reason this is doing it, because this is a Hail Mary play. The whole reason they're doing this is because Carney wants to dangle universal basic income in front of the Canadian electorate. And that scares the shit out of me. Because as much progress as we've made, the majority of people, like, we're really desperate. And if you dangle a carrot like universal basic income in front of them, and I don't see it any other way. That's exactly what the establishment or the political elites.
Well, they already introduced it. What was it? 223. I forget what the actual.
There's a bill. There's a bill, but Carney's going to come in and he's going to push this as a wedge issue. He's going to say, look, like, we're doing all this stuff for Canada. We're going to get rid of that bad old carbon tax, because they all know how much of that didn't work.
Well,
and they're going to focus and fixate on this. And man, it scares me, because, like I said, Canada has a malleable electorate. We're low information.
Well, here's the thing, John-Paul, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this fucking, and especially the UBI thing. Matter of fact, anyone watching this, go on to, whether it's my YouTube channel, my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page, or any of my social media pages or platforms, and just type in UBI, and you'll see I've covered that particular file extensively. And the most important thing that I take away from that, and it just irks me so much that Canadians don't have this baseline knowledge that should click in your brain right away, even if you just lived and grew up. So I started working, and minimum wage when I started working in 85 was $4.25, I believe, an hour. And everyone thought, oh, you got to have this minimum wage. You got to create the floor. But what people don't realize is the only reason why these politicians or anyone in government will advocate or support that stuff is the more they can pretend to give you. And it's not that you're gaining anything, because it's just more that they can claw back. That's really what it is at the end of the day. Because what I watched is whether you're started at $4 in minimum wage, or you quadruple that in the modern day, you actually, tell you the truth, the average Canadian today has less purchasing power, probably at $20 an hour in 2025 than you had in 1985 at $4.25 an hour. So that's the problem. And same with these floors that they try to create in terms of a universal basic income, you're just going to end up the same thing. People think, oh, if I get an extra, let's say $20,000 a year or whatever,
it's going to inflate and devalue our currency.
Exactly. Everything is going to, all the prices of everything, not immediately. It'll take a little time to sort through, but eventually, in short order, everything that you see the prices will be reflective. Well, you'll be back in the same goddamn position, and maybe even worse so, except there'll be one extra caveat, is now they have complete fucking control on you.
Oh my God. UBI with Canada, if the Liberals get in, dangle UBI in front of people, and people go for it, and we vote them in again, Canada is a communist country. That's our full socialist state. Like, there's no other end of it.
And you see that? If everyone just, wow. even if you don't read the entire book, I get it, it's a big book, so I wouldn't even say that they have to read the whole book. This is The Creature of Jekyll Island. It's all about the beginning, the start of the Federal Reserve in the U.S. If Canadians just understood, to me, there's two core things that Canadians or anyone on this planet, all 8 billion people, the basis, the first point that you need, the points of knowledge you need to start navigating through any of this stuff is understanding, the economic system, the monetary system as it functions in this modern, fully centrally planned world we live in. And two, such a simple question is, well, what does it mean to be a free human being? If Canadians even could get down to those philosophical roots, like start understand things, like just take the three branches of philosophy, epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Just start putting those three things and running. What does it mean to be a free human being? And since money is a representation, it's supposed to be a representation, a measure of value of what we produce, provide society, you should really learn about these things, because when the money that we use, if somebody can devalue it and destroy the person power, and basically, so you might think you're wise enough by putting your money in a safe or making sure that you're constantly checking your wallet. But through inflation, the government never has to go near your wallet. They can take that money arbitrarily just by the fact that they're devaluing it. So when you go to buy things,
inflation is the invisible tax. It's all like Ron Paul. When you go into the minimum wage arguments too, like Thomas Sowell just decimates the premise of a minimum wage and how bad it is. His latest book, I mean, the dude's still alive. He wrote one like last. I read Social Justice Fallacies last year. It's excellent. It's the same old thing. It's these well-meaning pseudo-moralistic leftists, and their policies are actually hurting the working class. The same ones they publicly, attest to wanting to help, right? That's how they validate themselves. There's so much pettiness and pseudo-moralism in a lot of these stances and these positions. To go back.
Yeah. Anyway, John-Paul, just before you continue on there, because this one I want to kind of, I do tend to get hyper focused, but because I'm doing this on X and Facebook and I'm getting some comments, I just want to kind of do a little interactions and some.
Absolutely, bro. You do your thing, man.
Okay, cool. Right on. All right. So I'll just see. We got Lion in the Sand here. Let me throw my spectacles on here. So we got Lion in the Sand. He's howdy y'all from an expat. Good to see you there, Lion in the Sand. And then John Wallace, my late dad who fought for freedom, challenged me years ago to consider this. Truth remains truth. Kindness remains kindness. Courage remains courage. Tolerance remains tolerance. And deception must always be challenged. This requires courage. Well, that's a great point there, John Wallace. Let me see what else we got there. From any sensible point of view, Canada is in total disarray. It sure is, Lion in the Sand. You're not joking there, that's for sure. Apparently, shit stopped on its tracks down south yesterday. I'm not quite sure what's that. Anyways, I see there's something about the Liberals here, John Walls. How could NB put in the Liberals? Well,
I mean, can we trust our elections at this point?
There's always that, of course, but then even without even getting to that point, that's the thing. I don't even have to get to that point, because when I run the scenarios through my mind and I think about the kind of people who, and maybe they didn't know it at the time, but they've been captured by the state. They're beholden to the state. They're reliant on the state for their income. And once they retire, they're going to be completely wholly reliant on them to maintain them even after they're retired with their pensions. So what it is a lot of people today will, if you're part of the public sector, if you've benefited from the growth of the state in the last 40 years, 50 years, you're kind of beholden, even if you vehemently disagree with a lot of the things that Trudeau has done. And I'm sure there are a lot of progressive Canadians or Liberals or NDPers who definitely on a personal level in their own mind disagree with it, but they're like, and this is one thing that libertarians understand, it's rational self-interest. Listen, if people you can try to fucking psychoanalyze people. You can try to come up with these narratives in terms of socialism, communism, where we all just subject ourselves to other people. And that will happen. But the only time that actually happens in the real world is when you choose to do that voluntarily and you make that conscious decision that that person is worthy of your sacrifice. The minute somebody externally tells you that you must sacrifice, any fucking adult should realize that's not how humans function. So these people,
it goes back to an old saying. It's like, if you my labor is not your right. You know what I mean? Like everyone, oh, well, I have a right to this and that. It's like, does it involve my labor? Then you don't have a right to it.
No.
Now that's a libertarian premise. You know what I mean? And I get it. What's going on? What's going on in Canada presently, though? It's the height of corruption, and I don't think people really understand just how bad. Even Canadians, even a lot of Canadians that are halfway paying attention, like so. Our government was going to finally get their no confidence vote. I'm just going to do a quick summation here. They were finally going to get their no confidence vote. So Trudeau goes on TV to announce that he has an intention to step down. We're going to prorogue Parliament, and obviously it's all a strategic tactic. So he remains in influence over the trade negotiations with America.
Hey, so then we active for someone that's fucking retired, that's got walking away. He's awful active.
It's unbelievable. And then he calls this big retreat, and they're posturing aggressively against Trump. Oh, we're going to do retaliatory tariffs, as if they have ground to stand on. It's a nightmare, and it's not in the best interest of Canadians. No. So we have a government, a historically unpopular minority government that did some political tactics utilizing our flawed Westminster parliamentary system to stall the government and shut it down. No one's steering right now. The federal government is not working.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Trump's come into office and he is going to levy tariffs at us. Mm-hmm. And man, like, I use this analogy a lot just because it's perfect. Like, here's what happened. It's like your neighbor. Your neighbor calls you up and says, hey man, your backyard's a mess. I don't know if you've noticed. And your fence has got some holes in it. Some of your mess is blowing into my backyard. Yeah. I'm sorry I have to call you. It's awkward, but listen, you're going to have to fix that and take care of it. Or I'm going to have to, call the authorities. Yeah. So then your response as a good neighbor should be like, hey man, I'm going to take care of that. I'm embarrassed myself. I can't believe it got so bad. We're going to clean that mess up. We're going to fix the fence. Don't you worry. Great. Yeah. But what does Canada do when Trump does that? We're gonna be retaliatory. We're gonna be adversarial with you in position and posture.
I'm gonna go out with the fucking bolt cutters and just make a bigger hole in the fence.
Unbelievable, man. And every nobody politician in the Liberal Party, your Jolly, your Freeland, all these people whose careers are over, are grandstanding on this issue.
Oh, you mean all those people just 5 minutes ago who were all cheerleaders and advocates and proponents and supporters of the carbon back tax, who now. No, it's not out of opportunism. It's not out of their own selfishness in terms of wanting to be your new ruler that all of a sudden every one of them now are against the carbon tax, or at least that's the lie they're putting forth. And to me, the fucking hilarious part is I'm kind of scared to see what the results of how many Canadians after all this are stupid enough to fall for that line.
It would be discouraging to know.
It really would.
Some are. We're very conditioned. We've been very conditioned in a multitude of ways.
Anyways, I know we're kind of getting off track here, not a little bit, but I kind of, there's a few things I wanted to stick to. So not just the comments, and we'll definitely get to some more of the comments, folks. I see there's quite a few more of them, but I want to get back into too so when even John-Paul had announced, let me bring this back on, that we were going to be having this, or I guess I announced it and you reshared or whatever, but let me bring this on. And then we've gotten some comments underneath. So I just kind of wanted to bring that on. Oh, here it is right here. Is that there? There we go. We got it there now. Okay, so I'm having a conversation with Canadian Libertarian 1 p.m. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. And then we had a few commenters here, and I just want to read some of the comments and kind of go from there, John-Paul. Sure. Okay, so Tom, not sure who Tom Kaczynski is. Not familiar with the name. He might be a follower of yours or something. But anyways, I think you actually see the wisdom of negotiating a merger. I wish we would do this at the people-to-people level in a way that helps all out. It seems to me Canadians are proud of their identity. There has to be a way to keep that while getting out of your terrible state. Well, this isn't actually a kind of important thing. And actually, like your reply to that there, John-Paul, Texas is still Texas. California is still California. If Canada becomes a state, we would still be Canada. Any Canadian still making a case for our sovereignty is suffering from a derivation of Stockholm Syndrome, making an argument for the sovereignty of a country with a governmental system that has the ability to remove their individual sovereignty is next level cockery. Canadians have no inalienable rights. A Westminster parliamentary system has an appointed Senate. 80% of our Senate is currently compromised of radical leftist Trudeau appointees. There's no political mechanism to change it. And this is the problem, folks. This is the problem, is everyone wants to change things. But once again, the only change, if you want to change things at the political level, well, to me, there's only one way to do that. And that's you have to be part of that political established or part of the system. But then, because we live in a democracy, you have to get the people. This is the part that people don't understand, is if you want to change, whether it's talking about redrafting the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or whatever you want to do, no matter what you, or having referendums in terms of whether you want to remain part of Canada or become a part of the state, all of this stuff has to do with, first and foremost, anyone that's willing to, or going to sit down and have a conversation or any dialogue, talk about something as important as these kinds of things, bare minimally understand, like I said, what the hell it even means to be a free human being first, right? Because really what we're talking about today, a good analogy, what I like to use, is just think of, instead of countries, just think of them as big giant plantations, right? Because really that's what they are in modern day but that's the thing, not all, or even if you want to use other analogies, I'm just saying, but they're not all equal. And the one thing about America that stands and makes it stand far and above every other country on the planet, it's not just their economic might. The economic might is actually a direct reflection of the American mindset, the American exceptional mindset, the American, live, let live, freedom,
It's the Constitution. So America's premise, their whole premise is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Canada's premise, I believe Sir John A. Macdonald made an argument. Someone called me out on this. They actually made my case for me. They said, you don't understand Canada and its history. I said, well, try me. and his whole argument was, Sir John A. Macdonald famously during the Confederation debates said, we are not wanting to be an American system. Our premise is not going to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In fact, we want to contrast that with a strong centralized government so we can proactively move our economies forward. So that's the premise of a lot of this. And you got to think, like, during this time, this is 1865, the Confederation happened. Like, during this time, like, America was very rare. It was a diamond. And a lot of people at the time, that's never going to last. Like, really, by 1865, a lot of people were still skeptical if America could last self-governance. And considering the Federal Reserve Act happened in, like, the 1910s, since then it's not really been the same. I mean, I know enough about it to understand that was when you started to be controlled, and we lost a lot of our self-governance there. But Canada never had this. We're a colony of Great Britain, and in our governments with this Westminster parliamentary system, there's no real mechanism for change. And it's the biggest thing for me, man, is our charter rights in the Canadian Constitution can entirely be revoked if the government wants to. So in other words, it doesn't mean anything. It's as simple as that. If I can do what I want to my population every time I make an emergency, I'm going to interpret everything as an emergency, and I'm going to do whatever I want. Like, that's tyranny. And Canada's system is set up to enable tyranny. And that's what a lot of Canadians don't understand. A lot of well-meaning conservative Canadians, the ones calling me a traitor and this and that. Look, man, my loyalties lie to my family, my neighbors, my community, the people, not some idea of a country, not some sense of national pride in some archaic Canada that just doesn't exist. Never really existed. I mean, man, our identity is totally contrasted against America. Oh, well, we're not Americans. Okay, well, what else you got? Oh, hockey night in Canada. Didn't they fire Don Cherry for saying something about the poppy? Like, we're anti-Canada. Being Canadian culture is hating Canadian culture, I guess, at this point. It's just so divided and askew. It's hard to imagine that we're going to survive. And so I really believe that. I think Confederation will fail one way or another. I really do too. That's a black pill, but
yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. It's self-loathing seems to be a national pastime in Canada these days. Anyways, I did want to get back into reading a little bit more from this because I'm just curious. Actually, I'm not sure who this person is. Actually, it's funny because their username on X, I've used this terminology to describe some conservatives in the past. So I'm not sure if this person is that. No, I'm just kidding. But tell him that extremist socialism is not the answer for SD.
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't know why he thought you were an extremist. I meant to reply to that because I interact with that guy a lot on X. He seems like a pretty cool guy. I think he misinterpreted something.
Okay, right on. Maybe because if there's one thing,
Definitely, yeah. You're not an extremist socialist.
no, no, definitely not. I see. Was it Jason James that commented down there too? I'm not sure if you've talked with him before or not. He's a good guy to talk to. Another fellow Canadian,
I don't believe
Jason
so.
James. Trump pushed the tariffs back to February 1st in order to force an election in Canada. Watch, and you know what? That's actually, I'm glad to see that Jason brought that up there, actually, because that's another something that I've been kind of talking about too with the family a little bit. Is because everyone, that's the thing, the media, they think they can, just the minute they think they pegged Trump in some way, they got him figured out, he just throws them for another complete loop. So they're going on now today, you know, with the talk about the tariffs. Oh, their spin on the story as well. It must have been Trudeau, right? That somehow put some fear. But no, I firmly believe that actually Jason's got more of a better idea. Is actually, you know what? A lot of the wind in the sail, or a lot of the air in the room, was all sucked up by the fact with Trump and the whole election and the tariffs and all that stuff. And actually, I think it's wise tamp that stuff down so that the cameras and the focus got to go back onto Trudeau and show how fucking retarded he is, so that he's not getting to play this little bit of stuff behind the scenes. And so that they can actually see some of the infighting and some of this destructive. Because I'm not sure if you've seen the video, but I seen the other day. And the media is probably not going to look to share this much around, but Chrystia Freeland had a hell of a time at her launch with lots of hecklers, right?
Well, that's the left. The left is eating its own. I mean, you got radical elements, and then you got elements that are trying to actually put forth a product, like a vision for Canada, and it's just it's incongruous. Like there's like the Palestinian protesters, like beyond that, man, is critical theory. It's not, that's been co-opted. It's not just about Palestine and Israel. It's about colonization. And like these people don't even believe in the sovereignty of Western, like Canada and America. Like we're colonizers too. Yeah. They view the world through a reductive lens of oppressor versus oppressed. And it's a Marxist thing. It's like people say the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. And that's at the core. A lot of these naive college students are suffering from that same thing I was describing, that pseudo-moralism. Of course, they got to take this view and support the oppressed or against the oppressor, the terrible oppressor state. Like it's the same thing. It's the same framework. You're just seeing it manifest itself in different realms of the culture war, essentially. Yeah. But here's the thing, man. Like you must have watched Trump yesterday, the speech and everything.
Yeah, I was just trying to find a post I'd made. I'm going to bring up here in a little bit, actually, and see what you think of this stuff in terms of the Team Canada here. But so what was that story you were saying there, JP?
Well, I'm just thinking about, like, we watched Trump. I watched yesterday the inauguration. I watched the whole ceremony. It was a beautiful ceremony.
I didn't watch the whole ceremony. I did watch the speech, though. I watched
the speech. So he gives a speech, and it's one of the best speeches I've ever heard in my life.
Good. It was good.
And I never carry water for politicians, even Trump. Yeah. It was the best fucking speech I've ever heard in my life. And then it's like, as a Canadian watching that, you're almost feeling it's because that's what we need to hear. That exact same thing. We need someone to do exactly what this man is doing. Yeah. And we need it like a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then what do we get? Feckless rhetoric. Pierre's calling everyone carbon tax carney, these little juvenile names he's put. Like, dude, fucking get out there and speak to the people, or you're gonna lose us. Yeah. And maybe that's for the better, honestly, because I've got no faith in that party anymore, man. I really did try to support them. I know, and look, man, nothing against PPC. I got a lot of friends that support PPC. I don't shit on either side. I shit on Pierre a little bit, to be honest with you. But I don't get on board with the toxic tribalism. Yeah. But like, Maxime Bernier is not it, man. And it doesn't even have to do with his integrity. For whatever reason, his charisma is not picking up in the market. So, I mean, they got to do some market analysis and pick someone that's going to, because a leader needs to be a leader and needs to be able to represent the core premise of your party. And it's not translating for him. I don't know if it's the Frenchness or what.
Yeah. And you know what, JP, and not to offend any of my French, because I have quite a few actually French folks that I'm friends with online and stuff.
Sure, me too, man.
But I just got to say this too. I, for one, am really fucking sick and tired of this thing where it's just always got to be someone who represents Quebec, anyways. Like, you know what I mean? There's got to be a strong voice.
Well,
for
it's
Quebec.
the Laurentian influence in Canada. It's always been very corrupt.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like, to me, it's like, I got no issue if, you know, every once in a while Quebec gets a voice that more outsized in terms of its representation, whatever. But the fact that seems to be the default, basically every election always has to be someone that's going to fucking carry water for Quebec. I don't really care about this playing this kind of like I say, that's even more divisive politics, because I don't give a shit about the whether, you know, French this, English this. Is let's do what's right. We're all fucking human beings. This is the part that drives me nuts. French, English, black, white, man, woman, all that. We're a fucking human being, folks. Let's talk about, because that's another thing when you hear about rights, LGBTQ rights, this rights. Listen, can we stop? You just create more areas where people can have disagreement. Let's just say we all have human rights because we're all humans. How about fucking that, right? Like that alone would go a long way to tamp down a lot of this bullshit division.
The thing with the French speakers in Canada is Canada has an elitist system. So in order to sit in high governance in Canada, you have to be bilingual. Bilingualism is like, I think it's like 12 to 18% of Canada. So right away, you're alleviating like 70+% of the population from achieving high office. So it's not participatory in that sense. And you could say, oh, well, you could just learn French. It's like, look, man, I grew up in a working class, post-industrial part of Canada. Like I couldn't learn French. Rich kids in my neighborhood got to learn French, but I didn't. So therefore, it by default is an elitist system. And there's no argument against that. It's demonstrable.
Yeah.
And that sucks. There's so much that sucks about our parliamentary system, and most Canadians don't understand it. And they're caught up in this sense. Again, they got this sense of national pride, and I admire it on some level, but I just don't understand. I don't think they understand what our country represents for the common person, for the pleb, for the peasant. Like, I don't know. It's sad for me to see.
Yeah, what do you think of this? I'm just bringing this up because, like I say, I shared this on my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. By the way, this is being live streamed to the Facebook page, and I see we got some commenters over there as well. Anyway, so I just want to make sure you can see that, right? It's hard to tell when I have that window open. Okay, that's there. It's up on the screen. So I basically put this post out yesterday because this is the part, like with Trudeau and Team Liberal out there now talking with, we got to take this Team Canada approach. So as you can see, I shared some of the pictures, and there's a lot more where they came from, you know, with the great big fucking, you know, basically military gear, dressed all in, you know, basically you would think they were going to Iraq or Afghanistan. And then this one over here, I don't know if you can tell, but that's a picture of a bunch of them bylaw officers that were harassing a single dude sitting on a fucking park bench. And then, of course, the leaked RCMP message, time for the protesters to hear a jackboots on the ground. Then you got all these nameless, badgeless thugs with their riot gear on and helmets and batons looking about. I mean, when you get dressed up like that, you're looking to fuck some people up. You don't get dressed up like that unless your goal or intention is to greatly intimidate and fuck people up if they mess with you. But here's the thing. Anyway, so my response is this the Team Canada that we are supposed to now unquestionably support? Millions of us were treated like garbage, bullied, intimidated, coerced, vilified, slandered, fined for going outside, playing in the park or skating, fired from our jobs, had our businesses shut down, prevented from visiting loved ones, going to funerals, forced to wear useless masks for long periods of time, kids being traumatized, subjected to coordinated propaganda campaigns, vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, and the brutal Emergency Act response, which included nameless, badgeless thugs beating, trampling, stealing private property, freezing bank accounts, arresting and imprisoning peaceful Canadians for doing nothing more than protesting tyrannical measures that were never science-based. Once again, I ask, is this really the Team Canada the tyrants want us to pretend exists? This to me is just like the fucking parent, and I seen them growing up. Yeah, might makes right, and you can fuck with people as long as you want when you got that big fucking, you know, bat to beat them over the head with, and that's what the Liberals, the left, been doing for like 9 years straight now. And then they afterwards, in the fact, want to do a kumbaya moment after you fucking did the kind of things that I just listed, and all those things are 100. I didn't misrepresent anything. Everything that I listed actually happened to Canadians across this entire goddamn country. And the fact that these fucking sociopaths, these narcissistic fucking, I tell you, my blood boils even to think of how these, because like I say, I've got nothing against an asshole or someone that's just trying to pickpocket me, but it's the kind of person that wants to cozy up to me, soothe me with nice, cheap, fucking soothing language so that they can shank me. That's what the liberals are these days. That's what these people represent. And that's why there's 0% chance, as Canada the way it is now, under the current circumstances, that I or millions of us could ever pretend that we are unified in any way. And if you want to blame those of us that you fucked with for year after year after year for not wanting to cozy up to you, then you can do that all you want. But once again, just like Hillary Clinton and just like everyone down in the U.S. and the Democrats who thought that they could clobber the American people over the head to get them to conform to their nonsense, you'll see that's not going to work. And it's actually going to be the exact opposite. You're going to see that actually the only unity that's going to come together are all of us who are finding each other. That's the one thing I will say about these idiots. Their opportunism, their short-term thinking is preventing them from realizing actually by doing all what they're doing. Oh, they're creating unity, all right. But it's not amongst anyone that's fucking going to be joining them. It's amongst people like us who are finding each other.
Let me provide an analogy. What they're doing, and this is their misplay, and it's been their misplay since COVID, is think of a fist full of sand. So what happens when you have a fist full of sand? The harder you squeeze that fist full of sand, the more slips between the fingers.
Yep.
And that's what's happening. And that's what happens at the dynamic of every authoritarian state. Even China, like China is a contemporary authoritarian state. It's called the Chinese Communist Party, but it's a hybridized version of communist fascism. It's like neoliberal technocratic hell. But essentially, and you're hearing everyone carry water for them lately because of this red note thing, but I won't get onto that. Right. Essentially, it's I totally lost where I was going there, man. That's terrible.
Shit, I wish I could help you.
I got my wife. My wife is here, and I seen her come into the room, so I signaled for a coffee. So I got a refill, and then my dog was going off, and I wanted to make some kind of point regarding authoritarianism. Yes. So essentially, and I heard Jordan Peterson speak to this. Any system of governance that requires energy to maintain it to that extent is going to fail over time. Like it's the best systems of governance are reciprocal. It's that reciprocity, like you're incentivized by personal gain. And that's how our Western societies were intended to run. And that's how they did run up until a lot of things started to slowly diminish that, to the point now where like I say, there's literally nefarious oligarchs that are influencing our politicians. You could see the ones that are bought by contrasting them against the ones that aren't bought, right? Like it's just so obvious now, like right across Europe, you could see it happening. It's wild.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, man. I'm just trying to get the all this X thing because I'm getting comments from different ones, but it's hard to know where they're coming from. So I'm just going to ask. So the real Andromeda, I believe that was someone that I seen that was commenting on X, I believe earlier before we went live.
He's one of my followers. I interact with that account frequently.
So actually, if you wouldn't mind, let me know there, real Andromeda, maybe in a comment below. Are you actually commenting on X, or have you moved over to Facebook?
I see an X logo on his symbol, so I think he's commenting on X.
Okay, because I've opened it up on X, and for some reason I'm not seeing anything. It's showing that it started 53 minutes ago, but in the chat it's completely blank, so I'm not sure. But obviously something's going on if you're not being able to see the other comments, and I'm not even able to see yours, so I can't exactly tell you why that's the case. But yeah, you're correct. There's, for some reason in the chat, there's nothing that's showing up.
Some technical difficulties. See, man, I can't even work all this stuff. Like that's
But I am seeing, obviously it is coming up on my, so what I have open right here is my live streaming software, StreamYards. It has its own list of the comments, and I do see it in there. So if you have any further comments, it might not be showing up on X, but I will get a chance to see it there, real Andromeda. Anyways, yeah, I know. I hear you. I know, JP. I'm the same way. I try my best to figure some of the stuff out. Sometimes I do all right. Other times,
bro, your setup impresses me in the way you're like. I don't know how to do any of this. I sincerely don't. That's why for the new year, like I said, my X account has been pretty busy. I've got a lot of followers and I'm growing at a good rate. My projections are pretty good, but I don't know how to step it up and do video content. I don't know how to do spaces. I can join them and I can talk on the camera. I'm good at that, but man, the tedious technical aspects are just far beyond my sphere of comprehension. I don't know how any of it works, and it frustrates the hell out of me.
Well, I'll tell you, JP, for at least for this part of it, there'll be other areas that, you'll have to seek other help because I won't be much good for you there. But in terms of this StreamYards, which is what I use, it's basically you don't have to download anything, or you don't even really have to do a whole lot. It's just basically incorporated into your browser, and you open up, your StreamYards, and it's actually pretty intuitive and simple to set up. Like, fortunately, they got it set up so they do most of the technical stuff behind the wall kind of stuff. Because I don't remember early on when I used to live stream with what was it? Streamlabs. Oh, Streamlabs. I had to get my son to explain me how, like, your bit rate to adjust your bit rate depending on your streaming.
It's Greek to me, bro.
I know. I was the same way. It's like, okay, Aaron, I get it, man, but like, just can you do it for me? And but then things change, so that's why I kind of like things like StreamYards. I'm sure Zoom is probably along the same lines where they're basically making it quite intuitive, and they do most of the stuff in the background, and then you just kind of just click on little things here or there. But yeah, anyway, so I just wanted to, so as Dave, and this is another thing, Dave Dismantle, he's someone actually that follows my stuff quite a bit, and Dave's always got lots of great things to say. So yeah, he's saying, and I agree 100%, Dave, you know that. People thinking their rights come from government via a piece of paper is actually one of the root causes of why you're not actually free. That is so fucking true. If people just even realize, like, as they grow up as an adult, all the whole point of these Constitution, Bill of Rights is not that they're granting you anything. All it's supposed to be is them acknowledging. And rather than just a handshake or a wink, it was supposed to be that, okay, we're not just verbally acknowledging that, yes, you have inherent and fundamental rights and freedoms that nobody has. You're supposed to be, okay, but we're going to write them down too, so people in the future will understand these things too. Although that's the thing. If you rely on a government piece of paper, like what Dave is pointing, then, well, what if they start messing around with how it's written? Then now you have to rely on that to tell you, well, now that's why a lot of people, when they invoke Section 1 or Section 33, Canadians are like, well, hey, it's totally legal. Well, it says right there in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Like, well, yeah, but it was the same with like any tin pot dictator, authoritarian regime in the world. Of course, they always advocate that everything they're doing is just, legit, and legal, right? But no, that's why it's important to know in your mind. If you understand the mind, what it is for me to be free from subjugation, from slavery, or indentured servitude in some way, then nobody will be able to trick you with any of this bullshit or legalese. That's very important. It's a great shield against authoritarianism, is just that small but firm grasp and understanding is, what does it mean to be a free human being? If you got that in your toolbox, it doesn't guarantee everything, but at least you got
like the Michael Malice explanation of anarchism, where he says that, he puts it in a very simplistic way. He says, my view is that you don't speak for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's his one line explanation. What does it mean to be an anarchist? It means you don't speak for me. Yeah. In any way. You don't represent me. I'm representative of myself and whatever this is. I get it, man. A lot of people, and I think this is historically why libertarianism isn't more popular, because it should be. It makes sense if you're prone to have the mind that can kind of grasp the abstraction of that, but we are conditioned to believe that, and it is a huge problem. And I think there's two pathways for humanity inevitably. I think we're either going to come into a more anarchist type of a system where it's working in the free market, there's not a government, or we're going to go into an authoritarianist style, like a straight up technocratic governance where the people have no say, like China. I think that's what the globalists were trying to do through Europe and Canada and Australia and America. I think they wanted it to run like China runs. I think there's some people in the establishment, be it the neocons or the deep state, the globalists, whatever, but they think the best way forward is for subjugation of people and not letting us participate in our governance, because we don't know what's best for ourselves. It's the ultimate arrogance, and you only see it in tyrants, and every tyrant shares this. They think they know what's better for you, and they want to, they even if you vehemently oppose their authority, they still feel obligated to being able to subjugate you. And it's unfortunate. A lot of people won't be able to go there mentally. They really don't. They do have these barriers that prevent them from even conceptualizing life in that regard, right?
Yeah.
I watched the little YouTube video that was, I think you had a pin to your to your profile, maybe about the enslavement or something, and it was
Oh, the story of your enslavement?
yeah. It was interesting. I get it.
Yeah.
It makes, but
Yeah.
again, it's like so many people just they
Mhm.
can't bridge that gap. They can't even get there, right? They're
Yeah.
so
Actually,
so
John
lost.
Paul, in addition to that one, the story of your enslavement, with that, which actually the guy that actually did the narrating was Stefan Molyneux. And he's actually a very, very well-known and popular philosopher. He's actually Canadian. He actually lives in the Toronto area. But in addition to that, there's another one, I think, between that one and another one by Larkin Rose, The Complete and Undeniable Truth, I believe that one's called. Both of them, and they're both under like 20 minutes, somewhere in around there, but they're so eye-opening to me. Well, what it is for me, being someone that cares about efficiency, I like I say, I've built engines since I was a teenager, so I'm always trying to extract power and be efficient and use with, my money and the resources. Anyways, but it's the same idea. Is, I mean, you could read, I've got hundreds of books, and you could read all of them, and you'd probably get, I would say, 80% of where you're at in terms of just a one video that's properly narrated and articulated in a manner that's, it's not using language that's so difficult that the average layman can't understand it. But the visuals, that's the thing with human beings and how we function.
Well, and that's why it's changing that way, right? Like we're going from books. I still read
Reading books.
voraciously. I'm always reading.
Yeah.
But for most part, collectively, like it's more videos, and not even long videos, more condensed videos. And I'm not going to get into is that a good or a bad thing, but it's a thing that's occurring, and it's a natural evolution of media. It's becoming more efficient. Efficiency is kind of the driver of most invention, right? Like it's just it's constantly being reinterpreted to be more efficient.
Don't ever downplay laziness, folks. Laziness, people get mad at lazy people a lot, and I hear you, but sometimes them lazy people are the ones that figure out great ways to create more efficiencies. Right?
Well, you're preserving energy. It's an evolutionary survival tactic. If you're not utilizing energy for
I'm not talking about lazy laying on the couch, but like you say, like John Paul's alluding to, is anyone that's trying to create something so they can get things done in a more efficient manner.
Yeah, just a preservation of your own energy, right? Energy is expensive. You have to hunt, you have to get animals. So if you're intuitive enough and mechanical enough to come up with ways to preserve your energy, then that's an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah.
So
actually, John Paul, you know what?
Right?
I just wanted to, actually, another thing I wanted to get across in this live stream too, because now that Carney's out there and all this attention about the Liberal leadership race, this is something I tell you. And for me personally, like I say, I've been doing this ever since the bailouts, and I get traction periodically from certain things, but this has been the one thing, other than the few people that, have been kind of fellow travelers in terms of libertarians in Canada, very few Canadians can I seem to get traction with this. So let's just try to do this here, because I want just because very few Canadians understand this. But when you hear them talk about like Mark Carney being this great steward of our economy, and he was, yes, the banker. He was the central banker, the governor of the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013. And the media, ever since then, now they had to report there was actually all the banks in Canada got bailed out. And I'm talking severely, not just a minor bailout, but people are so unaware of this and so not privy to this knowledge. But the media, they reported on it the one time, but after that, they never talked about it again. And anytime that it was even brought up, the story that's been told, and I'm going to bring this up now. This is the story. Let me bring this up, that Canadians have walked away from in terms of after the financial crisis, in terms of how America and Canada got through it. This is the story that Canadians have been told. And I've got it highlighted here in this CBC article talking about Mark Carney running for a Liberal leadership race. Anyways, while serving as the head of the central bank, Carney helped lead the country through the 2008-2009 recession. An economic, I like how they're using just recession now. It was the financial crisis, but now it's just a recession. But anyways, that right there is already tweaking of the fucking narrative, pure propaganda. But anyways, an economic calamity that wasn't as bad in Canada as it was elsewhere. Unlike in the US, no Canadian banks collapsed during Carney's tenure. He aggressively cut interest rates to prop up the economy on the roads, which some analysts credit with helping to save the country from ruins. Now, here's the thing. Now, technically, that's the thing. If you had a lawyer over the shoulder, they'd say, yeah, that passes scrutiny. You could say that. And you won't get it. you know, there's enough wiggle room in there. You can make that as a presentation. But the truth of the matter is, no, they didn't collapse. But the only reason why they didn't collapse is because of this. And I'm going to show you folks here on this live stream. I won't play the whole thing. What actually happened and the truth of the matter.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. The conventional narrative about the performance of Canada's big banks during the financial crisis goes as follows. While American banks bet heavily on subprime real estate and had extensive shadow bank holdings, Canadian banks did not. Due to Canada's more conservative banking culture and better regulation, Canadian banks, the story goes, didn't need a bailout. The bank's strength allowed them to come through the crisis with relative ease, needing only liquidity support from the government. However, the details of exactly how much each Canadian bank received, when they received it, and what they put up as collateral has remained locked away at CMHC and the Bank of Canada. Not even access to information requests have been able to free this information. Today, the CCPA is publishing a study by David McDonald, The Big Bank's Big Secret, which provides the first public estimate of the emergency funds taken by Canadian banks from CMHC, the Bank of Canada, and the US Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
The report bases its estimates on publicly available data from CMHC, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, US Federal Reserve, as well as quarterly report from the banks themselves. The report was subjected to external review by 4 economists. I'll now turn it over to the report's author, David McDonald.
Like I say, you wait till the folks that are watching this, wait till you hear just how deceptive the people
Thanks,
have been,
Bruce.
how bad the bailouts were.
I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn that Canada's banks drew support from not one country, but 2 during the financial crisis, Canada and the US. And I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn that Canada's big 5 banks drew on support for not a short period of time, but an extended one from October 2008 through through June 2010. In fact, for the 1.5-year period the Canadian banks drew that support, they drew it much longer than the length of the crisis itself. And I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn the extent of the support received by Canadian banks. In the report that we're publishing today, I estimate that at peak, Canadian banks received $114 billion worth of support. This figure is equivalent to 7% of Canada's GDP, or the size of Canada's economy in 2009. Put another way, support was worth $3,400 for every man, woman, and child in the country. For comparison's sake, the bank support programs were worth approximately 10 times more than the auto bailout program, for which Canadians put up $14 billion, and for which the loan portion has been repaid. During the financial crisis, Canadian banks drew support from not 1, not 2, but 3 separate programs in Canada and the US. The first was from the US Federal Reserve, from which they took loans worth at peak $33 billion converted to Canadian dollars. Second is loans from the Bank of Canada, from which they took $41 billion at peak. And third, CMHC purchased $69 billion worth of mortgages from the banks over the support period. As you can see from the chart on my left, the 3 largest recipients of aid were Scotiabank, Royal Bank, and TD Bank, receiving an estimated $25 to $26 billion at peak. CIBC received somewhat less money at $21 billion at peak, and the Bank of Montreal, for its part, received an estimated $17 billion at peak. While the bank values cluster around $20 to $25 billion, the size of the banks is in fact quite different. Royal Bank, for instance, is Canada's biggest bank, and in fact, the biggest publicly traded company in the country. Whereas for comparison's sake, the Bank of Montreal is about a third the size of Royal. And so when we look at the amount of aid received, it's important to adjust those figures for the size of the banks. And I think there it's really where we see the depth of the crisis for Canadian banks. On the relative chart to my right, we can see that 3 banks, Scotiabank, Bank of Montreal, and CIBC, at some point during the financial crisis, received aid worth more than the value of the companies themselves. Put another way, each of these 3 banks, at some point, it would have been less expensive to have purchased every single one of the shares in those banks rather than provide them with the support that they received. And so while our politicians were trumpeting the soundness of the Canadian banking system on the global stage, 3 of Canada's banks.
Anyway, folks, I won't play the whole thing because it is, I think,
I didn't know that. I didn't. Yeah. I can honestly say that's the first time I've seen this. I'm definitely a little more.
Well, like I say, John-Paul, and to me, wild. Yeah, and to me, the most shocking thing of it is the fact that I see, because a lot of young people will vote for the Liberals or the NDP. Or pretend that the Conservatives now or whatever. But what I want to explain to younger people, it's not stop falling for the left versus right. It's the connected people. It's the establishment who are benefiting themselves at everyone else's expense. And when you talk about like today, and I'm with you, listen, you go through my past posts and I've had people saying, oh no, man, it's mass immigration is why the housing market's fucked up. 100% mass immigration is a contributing factor, massive contributing factor why it's so bad as it is now. But unlike the U.S., the one thing about the U.S. after the financial crisis, yes, they let Bear Stearns, I think it was, that, or Lehman's, one of them, they did let one of them fail. But that was a good thing that they actually let one fail. But even though they did help recapitalize and somewhat bail out some of their big banks like JP Morgan and others, they also, the stipulation was, but we have to allow for some market correction. The people can't just, all the people that were playing the ninja, no income, no jobs, fucking bullshit and getting into houses and buying fucking all these. We can't allow that. We're still supposed to at least put on the facade that we're a free market styled capitalist country. So they at least allowed a market correction, and millions of younger Americans after the financial crisis got a chance finally to buy a home. Because when that market crashed, I forget how many, what if it was 30% at the time, but still a 35% drop in price in a house. It's a nice little reprieve for your younger Canadian or American people, right? That's nice. But in Canada, no, all that, whether it's the foreign investors or all the boomers who wanted to buy up fucking 10 fucking houses and rent them rather than sell them to the younger generations. No, they wanted to sustain and keep that bubble propped up so that their proverbial gold mine, where they can keep going and getting their HELOC loans and buying their new Mercedes or borrowing against that house, the speculative value of that house to go buy another one, once again, to soak up all of the actual housing so that young people can't even get their foot in the door. To me, this is the biggest thing, because without the banks getting bailed out and allowing them to maintain that housing market bubble, first of all, mass immigration would have never come to exist if there actually had been a genuine market correction there.
There's a lot of variables to everything like that. I had a conversation with Payman Akari. He's running for the PPC in West Vancouver, I believe is the riding.
Okay.
Really smart guy, and he actually informed me of this. I thought it was corporations like the BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street that were buying up the housing in lots of these markets to try to get to dominate the market. It's actually public sector unions in Canada.
Yeah.
That's who's buying up and trying to control and dominate the housing market. Like some of the disproportionate power that unions have in Canada is something that needs to be addressed at some point in the very near future. It's such a contentious issue, and I just the thought of it, man, it's such a mess. But it needs to be resolved because they have undue political power presently, these unions, and when they put their foot down, it can be profound. Well, they could shut the country down.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like, we can attribute, like I say, the unions for sure. Individual people that work in the private sector have enough disposable income to take on another mortgage so that they can in turn gain from the benefit of that increased speculative asset valuation. So, for years there, for a while, you could go buy a house and in Toronto, Vancouver, and boom, next year it was worth another $180,000 to $100,000. So now you could, now that's something. Now your wealth has now increased by 80 to 100,000. Now you can borrow against that speculative increase in your wealth and all that stuff. So there's lots of pigs at the trough. The problem is, and what people need to realize is, we can blame everyone for being opportunists, but this is the thing about libertarians. Once again, we understand human psychology, and humans are humans. You can pretend otherwise, but that's the case. So to me, to prevent this, whether it's foreign investors, individual boomers, unions, or anyone, right, then that's playing all these games, is take the housing market as a Ponzi scheme off the table entirely, and allow the market fundamentals to determine, first of all, what the interest rate's supposed to be. But that's the thing with a central bank. There's no way for any bank to just set their own, interest rates, because the central bank is who dictates that in this country and in a lot of countries around the world. But all of these things, it comes down to the incentive structure, and government and central banks, in conjunction with the government, working together, have created policies that incentivize the worst actors among us to participate in the market, to squeeze everyone out. That's the problem. It's not that, like I say, I acknowledge that if I leave $1,000 laying on the ground, sure, there might be the odd honest person that's going to walk by, pretty rare, and won't pick it up and pocket it. But I'm smart enough to know there's going to be enough people that's going to take that money. So I'd be smart enough not to lay that $1,000 bill.
Can I pitch a theory?
Yeah,
Let me pitch a theory here.
Yeah.
So I think they know. I think you're right. That's a massive problem for sure, and it's probably one of the main causational factors. I do definitely also think that mass migration in the market, without reinforcing the infrastructure of housing, 100% through the roof. So the fact, let me go with this for a minute. The fact that they're allowing both of these things to occur unabated,
right?
Doesn't that tell you that they have a nefarious motive? So here's what I posit the nefarious motive is. They want to nationalize the housing market. They want to say, look, and they want to blame the corporations. They want to blame the unions. They're going to blame all of these other factors, and whatever it is. They're going to have a great narrative for why the government now has to regulate the housing market. And then we're just, it's another nail in the coffin. Like the game the Canadian government is playing is just a full-on one of the radical left, and you could see it the way they're attacking the grocers. It's like that old saying, there's socialist policies create a problem. They externalize culpability, blaming the greedy capitalists. Their answer is more government regulation as a solution, which furthers the socialism that caused the problem in the first place. And I see this time and time again. So with the growth, it's like, are they trying to nationalize the grocers and the housing market in Canada? Because it seems like it. And it really does. Like, why else would they allow this to get as bad as it is? The rent in my building went from $900 to $2,400 for a comparable unit in 4 years, bro. I'm not exaggerating. That's in my building right now. Yeah. So that's unsustainable. So why are they allowing this to continue to occur without reprieve? Because they want it to fuck up. That's what my natural instincts tell me. They want this to go to $3,600. So then it gets to a point where people are really on the streets. Like, not the homeless we have in the camps that are drug addicted and mentally ill, but like actual working people are now entirely on the streets, and we're fucked. And then the government can come in and provide the answer. And that's what they want. They want to nationalize our housing sector. It's all part of their plan, I think.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So for some people, that is probably their intention, their goal. But this is why the founding fathers were so wise, is because people have their natural tendencies that are going to want to formulate things to the way that's going to be conducive to what they prefer. The whole point of keeping government as basically relegated, I mean, if you're going to create this thing that's government, that has this authority that no other human being has, the founding fathers mindset was, at least let's make sure it's constrained and restrained to the point where it's just basically like the proverbial referee in society when some other actor is causing harm or stealing from another. But this is the thing, is the minute you've given people this belief that this entity has this authority, I get it. It sounds great in theory that it's going to constrain itself, but as we've seen, that it's never happened in all of human history.
Never.
So the whole thing is, and that's why I think the only way humans, I believe, we do get out from under being, whether subjects, serfs, or slaves, depending on what century or millennium we're living in, is we just got to get, and I know this shocks a lot of people, but we just got to get out of the mindset. It's a mindset, folks. Liberty starts as a mindset, and your mindset has to start and begin with, there's no such thing as having legitimate, I call them rulers, but even if you want to call them representatives, but these representatives that you claim are your representatives are the ones that write the rules. Like, that's a weird thing for people to convince themselves that, no, you're my employee, I'm your boss. Like, so that's how the story we're told in a democracy is, we as the voter, we're the boss and they're our employees. But what fucking scenario, what job or what any occupation have you ever undertaken or gone to do where you're the boss, but your employees are the ones that get to make the rules and enforce them? So you're the subject to them.
It's a criticism of government in general. And this is maybe not, I wouldn't say it's one of the reasons why I'm not a full libertarian, but I think that a hierarchical structure is inherent and intrinsic to life itself.
Yeah,
I think it exists. Let me just finish here. I think it exists in the bacterial realm, in the animal realm, in the plant realm.
Yep.
And in human power structures. I always think there will be some semblance of a ruling class. I think there's going to be someone at the top of the pyramid.
Well, hold on. You said authority, though. There's a difference between being like an authority on the subject matter or on an undertaking than being someone that you must subject yourself, right? Because a natural authority,
but it's by the natural thing. Is a hierarchical system? Is a hierarchical system a competence hierarchy or a dominance hierarchy?
Well, no, but here's
at some level it's semantical.
Yeah, but but let's say in any voluntary setting, so hockey, there's a natural hierarchy in hockey. There's the captain, there's the assistant captain, there's the coach, there's the linesman. There's a natural hierarchy in all areas of life. And actually, trust me, once we've had enough conversations, you're going to be right there. It's like, okay, now that I understand the philosophy of liberty, I am actually a full-throated libertarian. You watch and see. But anyways, because libertarians don't deny natural hierarchies. It's just that in the state, I'm not allowed to opt out of the, like, this is the issue with the state is every other hierarchy they went to. My job, my occupation, right? I'm a truck driver. I have a foreman, and we also have the owner of the company. It's not that big, so we don't have shareholders, but there's a natural hierarchy there too. There's the laborers, who's usually underneath of the guy that's driving the truck or that's operating the equipment. That's all natural, and we all accept that. And like I say, but I can walk away from that job at any time. My boss never pretends that he can just arbitrarily.
I totally get what you're saying, and I did the first time. I don't think you're understanding. Like, I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying like we're all subject to hierarchical structures that we can't control, and they're not reciprocal and they're not voluntary. And does it suck? Yeah. Would it be better if they weren't there? Yeah. And it's not a defeatist attitude. I think we should still, let me finish up. I think we should still continue to strive towards liberty. But I think pure liberty, a pure anarchical system or a pure libertarian system is probably almost borderline utopianism, just like a pure proletariat, a dictatorship of the proletariat, right? It almost has parallels, right?
Give me one example of this one that you're talking about, because I just so that I know, like you said, there's all kinds of these natural hierarchies.
So what I said now, just let me lay it out, because I was interrupted a few times.
But give me an example while you.
Let me lay it out. I'll give you the example. Okay. So what I'm saying specifically is that all of life is intrinsically subjected to hierarchical structures. There's a hierarchy in bacteria, in viruses. Everything is hierarchical by nature. It's an evolutionary design, and we can't escape from it in many ways, right?
Okay, but let me use your example of the bacteria or the things, though. But you're trying
to debunk me before I'm already laying it out. And that's where
no. But I'm just saying though. But because the example that I'm just saying so that you can offer a better example. Because in that example, I'm allowed. Nobody's going to say that I'm not allowed to fight against bacteria. Like if there's some virus or bacteria or something that's trying to do something to me that's going to cause me I'm allowed to fight against it.
No, what I'm saying is the bacteria. I'm not saying bacteria relative to you as a human. I'm saying bacteria relative to other bacteria. I'm saying plant life relative to other plant life. The powerful plants suck up the nutrients in the soil. So the other plants, and there's no way the plant could be like, hey, well, I don't want that hierarchy. I'm not as powerful as you, so you can't have all the nutrients, but it's going to occur. Now that's a reality of nature, right? And that's why I find it hard to go all the way there. I think we should strive for that, but I don't think it's necessarily attainable.
But I'll use your own analogy. But there's no plant in the plant kingdom or on the world that the rest of the plants say, oh, we have to subject ourselves to that plant. They're allowed to fight for that survival.
Well, they do, but it doesn't matter.
But are you allowed to fight against the government? Try it. Just let me know how that.
And here's where we're having a bit of a breakdown of communication. I agree with you.
No, I think
and I really do, and I wish it did work that way, but I think it's always going to be in some case a ruling class. And what we need is a benevolent ruling class. Like, I think at different times through history, and I've studied it quite profusely for someone who's not an academic.
Why do you think that you require a ruling class?
I don't. No, I don't. I think it will be way better without one. And I think smaller, decentralized government is the best. But I think there's natural hierarchical structures that are going to be there. And I think regardless of people that know they would be better without it. And I agree with you. That's the conundrum where I'm at philosophically with myself.
I still haven't heard anything where you said, like, because the examples that you used, all of them.
I could use 10 examples. I could make a bunch of them, but I don't think you're.
Give me one that actually shows me, gives me the correlation that's anything remotely resembling. Like,
there's nothing that exists in life that doesn't exist within a hierarchical structure. There's not one item.
No.
There's not one thing. There's not anything that doesn't exist.
But that answer is severely lacking in actual clarity, because of course there's nature.
Couldn't be more clear.
But there's nothing in nature that says that I must subject myself to nature. Even against
choice is the thing. That's where we're getting confused.
Yeah,
I don't think there is a choice in it. There's, like I said, the plant doesn't get a choice to be a weaker plant next to a stronger plant. There's no choice involved, right? So that's kind of an irrelevant point for me.
You're diminishing humans in the realm of the state down to the fact that we're supposed to be basically.
No, I'm not. No, I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not doing that.
Well, I'm confused. I'm severely confused.
Evidently.
And first of all, John-Paul, like I say, just know this, because I know we've only had a couple chats. Nothing I'm saying is trying to, like.
No, and neither am I, bro. I like contentious topics. I like trying to understand one another. I think both parties learn in these instances.
For sure.
That's my problem with a libertarian ethos, is I always think there is going to be a higher. I think we're naturally.
But libertarians are not against or aren't. This is what it is, and it's not what it is. You just haven't talked to enough libertarians to understand that we don't disagree with. Well, obviously not ones that have been properly informed, because there's no libertarian. The prominent ones that I know, no one has ever denied the fact that human beings are going to be human beings, and people are going to seek out, to have power. The problem is I don't have to believe. It's like a thief. There's not. I know a thief could walk up and steal my shit anytime.
So I agree with that. I understand what you're saying.
No, but the difference between a thief and the state, I'm not going to stand there and say, oh, well, I have to allow you to rob me. Like, that's a fucking huge difference, man. The minute you convince the person that the robber, like Lysander Spooner is great for explaining this stuff.
You have to acquiesce to authority. The only authority the state wields is at the express intent of me. Like, if I don't acknowledge or participate in the system, then, and I mean, you could do that. You could do that right now. But I mean, it's not going to, because it does exist in some way. And I agree with you. I don't acknowledge their authority neither, and I really don't. My authority is to God. I'm a religious person. It's a whole different authority base, right? My boss is bigger in my so the state for me will never be my all encompassing savior. But I just don't think there's an easy answer to it, and there's not. This is something that's been debated since time immemorial. You can go back to Democritus and Socrates.
Yeah,
in
but
literature.
But if you ever listen to some of the people who have put forth, and I've listened to it, actually totally, like, if you could transplant yourself, 150 years ago to the American South, you would hear this exact same type of argumentation against ending slavery. Well, if we end slavery, well, who will pick the cotton? That was the biggest thing. And actually, prior to that, because slavery existed on the entire planet across the entire world, the mindset at the time was, well, hey, that's just the way it is. It's always been that way. It's just the way it is. That sucks that there's people that, are slaves and stuff. But the reason why slavery in that form doesn't exist today is not, or at least in our countries, it still exists around the world. But the reason why it doesn't exist in our countries per se is because most of us were at least raised and educated and informed enough to not believe that another human being can purchase, with money and have ownership of another human being. So liberty Slavery ended.
I
Now,
don't
there
think
was
that's why
actual-
slavery ended. I think
What?
slavery ended because of the from what the British did. Thomas Sowell, black liberals, white rednecks, white liberals, black rednecks. That's it. He lays it down conclusively. I think wars were fought. I think if those wars weren't fought and we still learned that we shouldn't because
but we're not fighting the wars
let
now.
me finish, though. You gotta let me finish a little bit, man.
Yeah, I know,
So,
but you're not referencing what I'm saying. That's what I mean. We're kind of going in two different places. What I'm saying is, I'm saying nobody alive today. Like, if you went out right now and talked to people in your community, not one person that you talk to, unless they're a self-admitted sociopath, is going to say, "Oh yeah, human ownership. That's good, man."
Do you think that's enough, though? Do you think that's enough? Because now let me finish my point.
Well, we have no
Just
slavery.
listen, man. I'm just going to talk because I got to finish one point. Because I understand what you're saying. We're trying to understand each other, but I got to finish this thought.
Yeah.
Christianity, in and of itself, it says you should not subjugate other people. It's a core tenet of Christianity. The cultures that enslaved other cultures and participated in this barbaric ritual, they came up and grew up in a Christian. It didn't help them. What happened was we had to fight wars to make sure that people didn't subjugate other. And we will in the future, man, because it's nature. The strong will subjugate the weak. And we could educate everyone that we shouldn't. We really could do that, but we'll never get there all the way. There'll always be people that won't appreciate that. So that's an important thing. And that's an important, it's an important refutation. Like the cultures that embraced slavery came out of a Christian doctrine that was well versed in not subjugating each other. It didn't work. There's nothing different now, like, because we know it in a more secular terms that we shouldn't do that. It could still happen. And the minute someone's not preventing it, it will happen. I mean, it's happening. The worst thing is now it's happening en masse. It's happening where the state is subjugating people, and it's getting worse and worse. We're like a crab in a pot of water being slowly boiled. So we're acclimating to the subjugation. We're acclimating to the tyranny to where we don't see it, and we really don't. And most people don't at all.
Because they don't know what it means to be a free human being, and because they will make the same kind of arguments that you just put forth, which is, well, it's just the way it is. And you'll never put it this way: you will never be a completely free human being.
That's a misrepresentation of my argument. That's a bit of a straw man, but that's all right.
Okay, but where did I? No, but if you say I miss you,
well, you just said that I said, well, we can't be a free human being. When did I say that, bro?
No.
Rewind the tape,
no. What I said was, you said there's nothing we can do about it. Like, it's whether you said there's always
there is things we can do about it, and that's set up structures that prevent it. We need some semblance of a structure. Listen, man, there's always going to be.
No, but hold on. Here's the thing. We're so, and here's the problem. Is
you just said a minute ago that
we're not even
that education ended slavery. Like, we realized we can't subjugate each other when there was wars fought over it.
Okay, once again, let's just use this example, and then I'm pretty sure this should clarify. So once again, I brought up the thief that wants to rob me. None of my neighbors, if I defend myself against a thief, none of my neighbors are going to come over and fucking hurt me because I defended my property against a thief. No one in my community, no sane human being is going to, there's not going to be seeking retaliation or retribution against me for defending my property against someone who's trying to steal it. But if I tried to stand up against government taking the money from me without my permission, which happens, quite regularly, well, a lot of my peeps would more than willing turn a blind eye and be like, hey, I guess you should, hey, if you don't want to fucking, pay the state, we all have to. So, hey, if you don't want to do it, well, if it means you got to go to jail or if you got to be penalized in some way. But that's the thing. If my neighbors at least understood what it meant to be a free human being, and no other human being has any claim on my, productive income, they'd be on my side.
Kind of understand that, though. Like, you keep saying that, and you accuse me of not. I understand that, man, in a profound way. Like I said, I believe in God. I believe in a bigger structure than that, and I think most people do. But here's the reality: is we do exist in this structure, and the government is a mob. It's done by mob rule. It's done by force. It's force compliance. I understand all the arguments. I really do. I actually recently read the Anarchist Handbook, where Malice breaks down various anarchist thinkers. I really do understand the premise, and it's not that I don't disagree. I don't agree with. Like, that's the direction we should be oriented to, and a decentralized power. But I know, and I don't even just think this. I feel I know that if there's not good people preventing bad people, there's going to be bad people doing things. So in some way, we're always going to need that. That's not a case for government. I think we should definitely be, like I said, as small. Like I might have said this to you. It might have been someone else I was speaking to. I view nuclear energy how I view government. Both have the potential for disaster. When you look at big nuclear facilities like Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, when they explode and have fallout, it's a massive detriment to anything around it. When you look at big governments and big authoritarian governments, you look at the Bolsheviks, when you look at Maoist China, when you look at these type of totalitarian governments, like the bigger they are, it's like the more death, the more millions of people subjugated. And it's like, so obviously, like with nuclear, we realize we got to decentralize this. We can't have a huge facility. But if we have a bunch of small facilities, it's going to give us power. It's going to give us the benefits without the potential for detriment. If we decentralize it and have small decentralized, I think the government is the same way. We need it massively decentralized. And until we do that, I think we're always going to be playing power games. And it is the natural, for me, the natural way for a healthy society is every citizen to be adversarial with the state. I don't carry water for a politician. I'm going to absolutely make him answer my questions. I'm not going to make excuses for it. I'm not going to get tribalistic because I have solidarity with the person that's going for the other political party more than I do for any of the public servants. It's like a natural adversarial system there that works best. But I'm very much for decentralized government. That's where I'm. But I think it still has to exist on some level, and I think most libertarians do too. I think it's more of an anarchist distinction there, right?
JP, it's an inside joke for libertarians, man. And once again, it's just a matter of like, and this is a Canadian thing, but inside joke for libertarians, and you'll get to know this, is how long does it take to go from a libertarian, a minarchist, to an actual full-on anarchist? 6 months, JP. I kid you not, man.
I've been looking into these ideas for years.
I kid you. Well, I mean, maybe you, like I say, that doesn't guarantee that everyone. But I'm just saying.
That's right.
What they mean by that is once you've learned about the 3 core principles of liberty, if you, like I say, it's just like if I told you, like when you teach a kid mathematics, right? I might have told you like all the times tables and multiplication, add and subtract. But then after that, I don't have to tell you how to figure like what I might have never told you, like what's 1,695 times 329. I might have never used that example before, but because I gave you the baseline formula, how mathematics works, well, you're going to come up with that, draw that conclusion all on your own, because you're just going to extrapolate that objective knowledge. And that's the same with libertarians. Once you learn that I own myself, nobody gets the claim over me or my property, and the non-aggression principle. If you use just those 3 principles, which nobody disagrees with anyone at that level, then you can't have a government that's legitimate because they do the opposite of these principles. So this is what I mean.
It's funny, no, and it depends on the scope and the scale of government when you're using these terms. Like when I say decentralized, I mean literally like city districts. And no central thing. I don't know the absolute answer, and I don't think I know. It's interesting because I watched Michael Malice recently with John Stossel, and you know John Stossel's style. He plays devil's advocate, and they were talking about the exact same things you and I are talking about now. And this is more. John Stossel has always been a famous libertarian, but he's not an anarchist. And Michael Malice is using the same examples. And I really do profoundly understand the argument. I do. I'm not there. And I don't think I'm not there because I don't get it yet. No. I think I'm not there because maybe I just have a difference of opinion on it. But I very much do understand these arguments, man. It's kind of my wheelhouse. Like it really is.
No, I hear you. And actually,
I love the disagreement there too, man. Don't ever, like, if we talk again, man, feed into it, brother. I love it. And we can get past it and still respect one another, surely, right?
That's what actually, that's the most important thing I think that we can take from it. Actually, I'm kind of glad we at least found somewhere we disagree, because then we can lead by example and show how you can engage, and you don't have to get all like hostile to each other.
No, here's a line I use a lot, man. You'll like this line. We can have unity without uniformity.
Exactly.
So we could find solidarity on numerous things, and we don't have to be uniform on everything, because that's fucking weird. You know what I mean? If we did, it's like, that's exactly how I think about that too, right? That's that. Then we're like,
But JP, can I bring this up just for the hell of it? And I don't mean nothing by it other than just to bring it up because it's a common occurrence in Canada. I'll even admit that I'm guilty of it myself. But as you noticed, you brought up Michael Malice a couple times as an example, and it's kind of a little bit just for the personal thing, it's a little bit crushing. But on the macro level for the country, it's like, damn it, why do we as Canadians always have to reference like? I'm a libertarian. If you want to call me an anarchist, like I'm the equivalent of Michael Malice, but I'm a Canadian. How about promoting me instead of Michael Malice? no, but that's the thing with Canadians. Like we're always pretty quick to like.
Well, it's. I don't think people think of it in that way. It's who's most known, right?
No. I get it, but the reason why he's most known is because people promote him.
I gotta grab a smoke, brother. I'm gonna take you with me.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta take. Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah. But anyways, so if you want, while you're doing that, actually, JP, there's a couple other little things that I wanted to kind of bring up.
Yeah, brother.
While you're doing that. So where was that now? Because there's some. So get this, and you'll probably be pretty shocked by this statistic yourself here, JP. I was like, I couldn't believe that when I read this. It's like, what the hell? This is the thing when the system it captures everyone, because once you realize that, eventually, well, that's how the whole with Margaret Thatcher, right? Eventually you run out of other people's money. But look at this. More than a third of Maritimers. Yeah, you can see that, right? Yeah, okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure it was still brought up there. But yeah, basically more than a third of maritime university students report disabilities. Mental health concerns make up more than half of all reported disabilities. This reported by Alison McCormick, January 21st. But basically, a growing number of university students across the country reporting disabilities and receiving academic accommodation, with maritime institution leading the way. Academic accommodations can include extra time for exams, assignments, note-taking, quiet space, write tests, and reduce course loads. But I mean, basically what this is, and I mean, if you think about that as a number, 1/3, in excess of 33% of our university students are suffering from obviously some kind of and you can't help but think, I wonder if it has anything to do with the kind of insanity that's actually being talked about and bantered about, and the kind of divisive topics that's front and center in our universities these days.
Oh, we're raising perpetual victims.
Yeah,
and the whole way we look at it, we're infantilizing our young. I see these young men all the time. I work in a factory, and they come in their early 20s. In fact, I just had a bunch of overtime available because one of them left his job, and he lives with his mom, and he comes in and he's driving a car, and he's going to it's his first job, and it's like, well, how did you get a car? Mm-hmm. Like, because for me, it's like I wouldn't have a car if I never had a job before. I wasn't raised like that. If I had something, it was something I had to get. Like, and I think that inherently teaches lessons that you don't get otherwise, and it's the infantilization process, and this whole reflexive empathy with your kids. It's like, well, I want to give my kids what I didn't have. It's like, I mean, I would focus more on giving them the lessons, right? As opposed to, but you encounter these young men. It's like 30 is the new 20. Everyone's got reasons to, I got anxiety. I've got depression. And I look at them and I think, you haven't gotten a kick in the arse. Pardon me for being vulgar, but that's you don't have all these problems. You just haven't gotten a kick in the arse. It's not been necessary for you to get.
Or even if it's not a kick in the arse, at least have to go through something that gives you some fucking
go through some adversity that gives you some perspective.
Exactly, adversity is people are just too overly concerned with keeping their kids away from adversity. And to me, that's the one thing that ever gave me any genuine strength and resolve was going through adversity. But look at this. Here's another one there, JP. Kingston, Ontario declares emergency as roughly 1 in 3. So once again, a third people, 1 in 3 households struggle with food insecurity. Counselor says residents are drowning despite doing their best to afford meals. So obviously by declaring emergency. So what's the trick? Right? You made people, like you were alluding to earlier, that's become so reliant on all this stuff, and government has fucked them over so much. So now what? You got to look to more government, the very people that fucking put you in that position in the first place. And it's like, now it's just such a cycle of insanity. But to think of I've been to Kingston. It's not a huge city, but it's a fairly decent sized city in Eastern Ontario. And I got to tell you, to think that 1 in 3 households are struggling with this. Once again, and you can't help but think all the inflationary pressures that have been built up, especially when it comes to food costs, aren't contributing factors to that. But once again, government put them in that position, and now they're finding themselves to look for government.
And it goes back to that snake eating its own tail that I said, and that's how socialism happens. You look at at Argentina, what happened there. The act of giving people something infantilizes them. You look at the Great Society reform in America when the welfare reform occurred, and it's literally incentivizing single motherhood. Like it was a detriment to any community affected, and the communities were like, you could see the numbers. And to cite Thomas Sowell again, he lays it out like just demonstrably where it's clear. It's like these leftist socialist policies have a negative effect on even the people they're supposed to help.
Yeah,
like it's the whole teach a man to fish type philosophy, man. Like you got to make a guy get up and walk on his own, and he's not going to appreciate anything he gets unless he gets it on his own. That's just a common sense observation in life. Like, look at the kids when you were young, like the kids that like got everything, you know what I mean? They had the newest whatever bike, they had the newest video game system, whatever it is, but they didn't appreciate their shit.
No.
And then you look and you know, one of your friends that doesn't have much finally gets something, maybe he saved up from his paper route. And that motherfucker loves that item. That means a lot to him, right? You see it, and that's when
my first car, JP.
There you go. You know what I mean? It's different when you make it. You learn the lessons therein, and it's a shame because it's such a fundamental flaw, and I think it's so widespread. The way we're inclined to raise our children now is we're making just perpetual victims, and then we give them this. Everyone's got a psychological issue. Oh well, you've got depression. You don't got depression, bro. How's your life? Oh well, I got no girlfriend and I don't do much. Well, no fucking wonder. If you weren't depressed a little bit, right? I'm not pulling an Andrew Tate here and trying to make a case that clinical depression doesn't exist. It definitely does. Yeah. But I mean, on some level, you know.
Yeah, that's wild. But if you see, I pulled this one up too, because it's funny. I wanted to use this one because you get some of these people on the, you know,
this is my hot button issue.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about this, hilarious, is the fact that CBC had to run this, and they actually, the poll that they referenced actually had to admit that a full 25%, which is pretty good one for Canadians, maybe open to join the U.S.
So how many is it really, right?
Right. Well, this is the thing, right? If a CBC, or what was the poll? I believe it was one of the establishment polls. Where was it? One survey. Abacus, it was Abacus Data or Angus Reid, which are two of the establishment polling institutions in this country. So even them, right, even in those, and of course it would have to do with the way it's worded. The one that actually got the lower number, if I remember correctly, it's just that it was worded like, do you want to become the 51st state? But if it's worded or articulated in a manner like, do you want to have a closer economic ties, or like once again, ask Canadians, would you like to be able to get paid in American dollars?
Yeah. Would you like to pay way less taxes and have the Second Amendment? Right. How would you like to actually be able to have self-preservation rights?
Yeah. So I mean, the simple fact that they're having to report even numbers in terms of upwards of 1 in 4, and the fact they're even saying that even when they ask, apparently they even ask about Americans. One poll found that even a quarter of Americans were also supportive. And here's the other thing about when people are talking about whether it's a minority or majority. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you know, a matter of fact, people say, oh, well, it's not 50%, so we're good. Well, no, because actually, if you understand in Canada, we are parliamentary first past the post system. Well, matter of fact, a minority could completely. So this is the thing that people want to give government so much power all the time. Well, you know, if we get together and you people that are anti-America, what if we all got together and ganged up and did become 51st state, because we could use the power of government against you, right? And impose our will on you. Well, you're not liking that so much these days. Well, here's an idea. How about we all tamp down on this fucking use of force and violence and coercion as a means to an end, and get to the point where we're just, like I say, thinking critically. We can put all this, whether we become a 51st state or whether we're just modern serfs in Canada. Let's advance and develop our country to the point where we're all genuine, just free human being, and that's where we fight. We don't have to join any economic union, right? But once again, we're nowhere near that point. And this is the thing I want to get out to the progressives, even the genuine liberals, like people like that, and even the ones that are nationalists, conservative and stuff. Listen, you can pump all that shit all you want, but once again, until I see some actual cohesion where you're willing to respect my rights, my fundamental rights, and the rights of JP and the rights of your fellow citizens, we're never going to get to anything remotely resembling being unified. And because there's always that threat of government that is now so much of a behemoth and such a threat to all of this, then we should at the very least agree, let's put that big gigantic club away and start dealing with each other in terms of, talking like me and John and Paul do, in terms of trying to figure out where we can come together, where we can find disagreements. Because as you see, this behemoth of the state in the wrong hands or in the hands of your opponent can be very dangerous.
This is what's interesting about the Trump administration. It sucks,
Yeah.
and anyone who's liberty-minded doesn't like executive orders. Let's put that out there right now. But it was necessary because he has to undo a lot of things, right? So what I like about this, and this is going back to Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade has nothing to do with abortion. It has everything to do with the state being able to govern itself, absent of a centralized government imposing their view on them, right? And that's what it seems like this administration wants to get back to more liberty. And look, man, it's ironic that it's a centralizing force, and it's ironic that me, who wants decentralized government, is making a case to join America. But the American system and the constitutional protections are what I want. I want the inalienable rights. I want to be able to, actually have some faith in the system. Like the Canadian parliamentary system, it's so clusterfucked, to be vulgar, with all these things for the state to have authority over you. And it's designed that way. It's that was the intention.
Yeah.
And a lot of Canadians don't even grasp that. Like, forget about getting all the way to like no one has any authority over you. A lot of Canadians can't even get fundamentals on that issue, right?
No, not even close. No, I hear you there. Well, that's an ongoing issue for, like I say, to me, it really comes down to it's a mindset, and we got to get. And here's the thing: the big glaring difference that we're seeing today is between America and Canada, and I hate to point it out, but they have that. It's part of their mindset. Like, think about it, like when you're going through school, the difference thing you're taught in terms of your history, right? When you're an American, your history is some pretty uncomfortable shit. I'm sure some teachers try their best to spin it in a way that it doesn't come across quite as bad as it sounds. But basically, your founding fathers, they basically, violently overthrew the people that were trying to, take money from them against their will, and it was a 3% tax, for fuck's sake. 3%. A Canadian or American alive today be like, fuck, they only want to steal 3%. Holy shit, here, take my money. Right?
Yeah,
right?
It's phenomenal. And it's like I said, it's that crab boiling in the pot, or the frog boiling in the pot, whatever the analogy is, right? It's a gradual decrease. Yeah. So they're gradually decreasing our quality of lives to the point where now in Canada, I made a post the other day, like, you're not a citizen of a country. You're an employee of a corporation, and your boss is a cheap bastard. And he's not giving us like, look, man, I'm bottom rung of the working class. I work in a plant. I work my ass off. I put in long, hard hours, and I got just barely enough to pay my bills.
But was that last year, John-Paul?
What is it, buddy?
Was that last year you got a really pathetic raise, you mean, or?
No, I just mean in quality of life, like from the government.
Okay, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, though, John-Paul, and maybe the people who are watching this, if they're not familiar with this too, because if once you realize this and learn this stuff, it's like, holy fuck, you don't realize just how centrally planned our economy. So the central bank, because inflation was so high, what's his name? Was it Wilkinson or Pola? Anyways, one of our central bankers, I could pull it up if I could think exactly what was the title of the article and stuff. But anyways, basically, they have these meetings or exchanges, whether it's, done through Zooms and stuff with the Canadian business organizations. There's a bunch of them, the Canadian Business Federation. There's the provincial ones, but basically what they've been doing and sending out notes and emails is basically telling employers in Canada, especially the large ones, is to soften up on the wage increases. Why that is? I'll tell you why that is. Because for the central bankers who are trying to micromanage our economy, you getting a raise, John-Paul, if you had got a nice $3 or $4, or myself, rather than getting a paltry 90 cents last year, which was basically a slap in the face because I didn't even stay on top of the inflation. So I actually lost purchasing power last year. But if my employer instead had been able to give me a decent sized wage and I had some actual purchasing power, well, that inflation would have continued, right? This is the problem. So the only way to tamp down inflation, John-Paul, with central planning is to make sure you and I are just barely treading water and to keep 100%. Us constantly down. That's a fucking terrible thing when somebody in Ottawa in some place gets to determine and dictate what you and our boss no longer even has.
And it's so bad in Canada. Like Polyev quotes this statistic a lot, is we were on parity when Harper was leaving office. We were on parity with our American counterpart. Now we're 60%. So we've lost 40% in Trudeau's tenure.
Well, a lot of that parity for our dollar back then. The one thing I will say that I'll give kudos, because people hear me giving insults and deriding Harper, rightfully so, for the things he did. But one thing I will give him a positive exposure for is he was a proponent of more getting oil and gas to the market. And in Canada, that's a big old file in Canada. So if you want to get your dollar, on par with things, start selling a lot of your large commodities such as oil and doing that. And under Harper, it was not quite drill baby drill levels, but there was a lot less impedance on.
This is the globalist influence too. It comes from a neo-Malthusian type of an interpretation. It's like there's too many people, the climate change narrative, the anthropogenic climate change is the apocalypse, and every little time there's an extreme weather event or a forest fire or a bad fire, it's always climate change. It's all bullshit. Thank God now you've got Trump, that's the most powerful politician that calls it what it is. It's the whole degrowth thing. It's a scam, man. They're trying to degrow and deindustrialize the West and Western economies, while China's opening up 3 or 4 power plants a week and doing the opposite. Why does China not have to do it? Well, they already have communism in China. So, I mean, clearly there's more nefarious intentions behind this, and there is. And there's a plethora. I got a list that I save, and I always pop it out when someone says, oh, well, who goes? Like, there's a plethora of well-credentialed and well-tenured, even Ivy League academics and scientists that entirely disagree with this shit. And they're calling it out all over X, man. Thank God. Because it's used as one of the biggest ways to coerce us into more enslavement, right? Like, let's reduce that quality of life even more. Remember the liberal minister that got up in the House and he said, oh, you can't take your kids for a vacation, put your kids in the car and drive for 10 hours. What about climate change? It's like, holy shit, dude. Like, what about our quality of life? What are we even doing? If you're that anti-human, why don't you just impose mandatory MAID for everyone? I mean, it's nuts, man.
Yeah, I just want to reply to Scottsley, the comment there, because I agree. Well, we talked about this already, John-Paul. The thing I like about Trump is when he started talking about the 51st state stuff, he actually made Canadians identify as being Canadians again as a response. It made a lot of patriotic lefties. It was quite a spectacle to behold.
It was something else, eh? That is one of the most despicable things. All these people that hate everything to do with what we call Canada. Yeah. They hate our history. They hate everything about us and our culture. And now they turn around and they're Canadian. And we need there's fucking Canada flags all over the place. I just can't handle that, man.
I'm just going to check too, just because I see John Wallace is over there on Facebook. So let me just check on some of his comments. Thanks for joining us over there too. Let me see what you got here, John. I am tired and old, but we must on for truth, decency, young folk. Yes, we must keep on there for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Perpetual optimists here, man. We're going to keep fighting at however we have to.
Yeah. Oh, Tommy Gunn. I don't know if it's the same guy that's normally on X. That he used to watch my content years ago. If it's the same guy, but I don't know. We must have fallen out, but he's been kind of lurking around lately. But anyways, have you guys read Robert Duchesne, Canada in Decay? Canada was founded by white Europeans. The fact don't lie. If you want something other than that, you don't want Canada. Oh, I get it. Yeah, that's probably why Tommy Gunn. Listen, man, I got nothing against you having your own preference there, but I don't get into that white fucking stuff. I don't
play that shit neither, man. That ethnocentric thing and like, look, fuck, there was a bunch of people here when we got here. Yeah. and it doesn't work great. That's for fucking sure. But I hate that stuff, man. Yeah, I don't play that ethnocentric stuff, man.
Well, and Tommy Gunn, you would know, man. I mean, come on, think about it. When you're just using the race thing, I mean, come on, the very guy that's fucking you over is white as fuck, right? So come on, like, I mean, we can't just go by.
Solzhenitsyn said it best: the line separating good and evil goes between every man's heart. 100%. There's no state, there's no group identity, there's no immutable characteristic that can define that. It's up to you.
But that's the beautiful thing. I wish we could. That's what I like about. So you could take Nietzsche, you could even take fucking or Solzhenitsyn, you could take Nietzsche, you could take now Jordan Peterson today. I want us to expand on human knowledge and these ideas and these concepts rather than constantly trying to devalue them and put people back in this mindset. It's just left versus right. Like you say, all of these people, the Bible would be completely conducive with Solzhenitsyn. Well, Solzhenitsyn was
a lot of these topics are subjective, right? So they're not, it's not mathematics.
No.
So that's why, like, there's no clear answer. It's just kind of conjecture on some realm. Like, it's you have your preference at the end of the day and how you interpret things. And for me, man, I change. I don't try to define myself too much. I don't try to put a label on myself because I don't know what's going to happen and how I'm going to see things with new information. Yeah. And I'm constantly evolving on that sense. I find once you will stagnate once you start to really try to solidify who you are and your identity philosophically. That's when you start to stagnate a little bit.
That's true. Actually, that's one thing I will say about the libertarian thing is, and well, the thing that kind of a little bit annoys me is because people, a lot of them, especially in America, and then you'll see it in Canada, is but the thing is, I'd be completely comfortable calling myself an anarchist because technically that's what I would consider.
Yeah, you're definitely more on that side.
But what it is that terminology has just been so destroyed. It's like as soon as
people don't even know what it means, bro. That's the worst part. No one even knows what anarchism means.
It literally just means
they think it's bad. It's chaos, and it's not. No, it's absence of authority in government. It's individual. It's different than that, right? Like type stuff.
I like the picture where they show the big vegetable and fruit market and people out shopping. Like that is anarchy. No, but really though, in the absence of rulers, that's like anarchy is. Like there's nobody in that market. Just like if you go to
it needs a rebranding. It needs a rebranding. People need to get some market analysis in there. Just like the PPC, they need a rebranding too.
Yeah. But anyways, there's a few more things I wanted to cover there, John-Paul, because we're at the 2 hours. Actually, this one's been going by really quick, actually. I'm really enjoying this conversation. But
I enjoyed it too. I like the point of contention too. I enjoyed that. Like, and I think it makes it better for people watching, right? Clearly, we're not full of shit trying to blow smoke up each other's ass, right?
Yeah, WWF was a real thing back in the day for a reason. I would like to see a good battle, right? But that's the thing to me, and that's why it's so important to me to the kind of people that I engage with is I didn't come into this knowing that you have honest, good faith arguments.
I'm just trying to be as honest as I can. Sure.
I can be. I'm a fucking human like everyone else. I can get put on my back heels and I could have get, but I know I won't get that way with you because I know you have the right intentions. So to me, it's like nothing you could say would get me, like,
I feel the same way, bro. I encounter it often. Like if you come at me with a troll, I troll right back. Yeah, but if someone comes at me with a difference of opinion and they want to actually discuss it, I love that. Yeah, I profusely enjoy that. That's actually why I'm on X. I never thought I would become kind of popular and get a following, but so it's the truth that I respect and I want honest dialogue. Yeah. But when people are just trying to just dunk on you, the whole performative charade of an X debate, like, well, I don't know, man. How about a substantive refutation as opposed to just trying to shit on me, right? Like, let's.
Yeah, well, especially the ones where they're just doing like the one-liner insults or something. Like that's like someone running up to you, poking and running away. It's like, come on, at least stand.
Yeah, lots of bots.
At least have the courage to stand in front of me while you're being an idiot. No, but you know what I mean. But anyways, so check this out. So this was another thing that's like another Trump effect. And of course, I love using CBC, the fact that they have to report on this stuff. It must just irk them in there. You can tell. But anyways, Canada-led proposal to end international fossil fuel financing dies with incoming Trump administration. Deal would have phased out certain fossil fuel subsidies and diverted public money to clean energy instead. So this was a report by Inayat Singh, January 19, 2025. Anyways, I'll bring it off. It's just the fact that, so Trump, once again, this is the Trump effect, folks. Like him, love him, or hate him, however you want to look at Trump. The fact is now, and once again, just like me and the wife were talking about this too, no one in my family has anything. Matter of fact, my son was even asking me, would you drive an electric car? I was like, fuck yeah. Like I was even thinking if I could get myself on one of them little electric smart cars and go back and forth to work, because I travel an hour back and forth every day because I live in rural part of New Brunswick. I travel into Fredericton. It's like, fuck, if it could be dirt cheap, but to me, it's yes. How about we just stop picking winners or losers and just let the market? Like, if you want to go buy an electric car, don't force me to fucking subsidize it. You go get your electric car. If you want to go get your gas powered car, you go do it. If you want to get your diesel, if you want to get your hybrid, hey, hydrogen, I don't care, because to me, that's the beautiful thing about market competition. And the way capitalism is supposed to work is we don't want a one size fits all. That's a top down. That is every fucking tin pot dictatorship or centrally planned system who is now basically living still as third world countries. That's the kind of mentality those people function.
Yeah, it's just picking winners and losers by any government subsidies is wrong on any. In my opinion, we shouldn't be subsidizing anything.
No, exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. But actually, there was one more thing here too, is let me bring this up. And I was impressed when I seen this. Once again, another CBC article. Here it is. Yeah. So I think that might be a fashion place. I'm not sure. Aritzia or whatever. Anyways, Canadian Tire, Lululemon among Canadian retailers shift in production outside of China. Tariffs, forced labor concerns have companies re-examining relationship with China. So boom, once again, folks, there's another one of those Trump effects. Did I bring it on? Oh, sorry, I forgot to bring that on there. I think it's on there now, though, right? You can see that. Can you? Yep. So there it is once again. And I usually share this stuff in the links in the description of the video. But once again, it's basically a lot of these stuff just came out in the last couple of days, so you can find it on CBC yourself. But once again, another Trump effect. Like him or not, we're seeing some areas here where, yeah, this would be a great, taking some of this production outside of jurisdictions who treat their labor force almost like slave labor, a slight smidgen maybe above old world slave labor, but pretty close. Or
the Trump effect is very real, and it's profound, man. When you look at the globalist governments, look at like Olaf Scholz in Germany, Macron in France, the Trudeau regime in Canada, like all of them are backstepping now. Like they're like Olaf Scholz, no confidence. Macron, no confidence. They're just pretty much done. And then the liberals will be irrelevant the minute we can make them irrelevant. Things are changing and realigning. There's power structures realigning, and it's going to have profound effects. When we talk about the economic union with America, just to go on that for a second, when you hear Kevin Leary's latest explanation, Kevin O'Leary, when he says, I watched him on a podcast, man, and he laid it out like the UK. You know what I mean? Like the UK is Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and Scotland, or whatever the composition of it is. Yep. But they act as one country, essentially. They have a centralized governance, a common currency, but they all still maintain their national identity, essentially. Something like that. For me, man, I want the Constitution. So if it comes with the Constitution, that's the seller for me. Yeah, exactly. I want some liberty enshrined in a document that the state can't do a certain thing. And because I just look at what they did with COVID, look at what they can do, knowing what I learned about the parliamentary system and our charter rights, and what everyone learned about our charter rights during COVID is that they don't mean nothing.
No,
they don't mean anything because they could be revoked at will by the government. So that's that's crazy to me. But I prefer the American system of governance because of the constitutional protections. So if that's not part and parcel of this, I don't want it as much. You know what I mean? But Canada needs some kind of an answer right now. It's a shit show.
And you know what, JP, actually, just I'm glad you said that. Just for a little clarifying here. So that's the thing. Even when, because I should have said that, which probably would have, but we got to have our minor disagreement, and it was no big deal. But I could have actually probably quashed it pretty early on by just saying this, because I've said this many times in the past. Because I'm friends, obviously, with a lot of minarchists in Canada, because a lot of them aren't philosophically, at that point, or anarchists, or that. They are minarchists. They want the night watchman state. But like with them, and we have disagreements all the time, but with them, I just, and they're aware of this as well, is I'm just like with you. I'm with you. If we're traveling on the way path to liberty and you're willing to travel, a mile and a half, and I might want to go a mile and 3/4, listen, we'll have a fucking great old time on that journey. There won't be no issues. The one thing about anyone that's, whether you're a minarchist or a full-throated libertarian or an anarchist, is we all have at least the single-minded goal of bringing more liberty to each other, and that
100%. And again, I don't like the labels. I when I'm forced to put a label, I mean, I'm a conservative. I'm a center right. I guess what would have been a classical liberal 15 years ago. I don't like those labels, even though, you know what I mean. It's pigeonholing me into something, and things are changing, and a lot of things are changing. I'll go back to Jordan Peterson and to bring up Michael Malice again, just because he's the best example of it, because he's spoken to everyone that's relevant.
Yeah.
But where they left, like Peterson admitted, he's like, Peterson's not an anarchist, and he didn't make an oath to anarchism, but he said the best way we can go is to orient ourselves towards liberty.
Yeah.
The less government, the better, ideally.
Yeah.
And that's the direction, that's the trajectory that we have to be on. Because the alternative to that, it's very black and white. The alternative to that is not stationary, it's downwards towards tyranny. If we aren't orienting ourselves and our societies towards liberty, they will naturally sway towards tyranny.
Yeah.
There's just there's no other way around that.
Yeah, and besides that, John-Paul, I think too, here's another thing I brought out when I've had this kind of little bit of a discussion in the past with minarchists too, is or even conservatives, is imagine when we get, even let's just imagine that trajectory and we get to that point, we're already at that, like that 95% where you or others want to get to. It's like, I don't think we got much to fucking worry about at that point anytime. Anyways, right? If government is so minimal that it's like literally so just this tiny little thing, and it's just the night watchman state or a referee, yeah, you won't get much fucking, like, yeah, you'll knock the wind out of the sails of people like myself anyway. So yeah, I'm not going to be out there, guarantee I'm not going to be out there railing against that last tiny sliver of because I, as a human being, realize that we're all fallible and there's no such thing as perfection anyways. So, but to me, that's really what it comes down to today. And you've got it and I've got it. So whatever labels we put on it is the mindset that we care about liberty and we care about the liberty of others. That to me, you know, that's the most important thing. I don't care like exactly the label you want to place yourself, how far we're all going to agree on this. But at least we're all have the right mindset. And I know that if I was living next door with JP, I'm not going to worry about that guy constantly fucking trying to use the state to clobber me over the head. So that I'm fine. I don't give a shit. Like John-Paul, matter of fact, you can walk around. There was a guy up in Ajax. He was a strange dude walking around with pink Easter bunnies, full grown man in his 50s, like all day, every day. I don't know if he had mental problems or he was just like attention. I was like, hey man, do your thing. I got nothing against, like, to each their own. Like that's the thing about a person. Once you adopt a live, let live mentality, same with the whole sex thing and all that stuff. You do you, I do me. You know, and it's perfectly conducive with the Christian ethics too, is because it's not
well,
really.
we live in the Christian ethic is that you have to be free to sin. That's what the Christian theocrats don't get. They want to impose Christianity on people, and it's not real. It has to be voluntary. It has to be reciprocal, or it's not real. And that's not what God wanted as far as any Christian doctrine goes. So it's kind of an oxymoron. There's Ben Shapiro gave a really interesting argument because I just heard him say this one time, and I disagree with Ben Shapiro on a ton of things. I could separate the wheat from the chaff with people when I'm referencing people, but he made an interesting argument against. He said he was more libertarian when he was in his 20s, and then after he married and had a few kids. And I just love the analogy he used. He said he realized that we're all kind of in the ocean, and if people are pissing in the ocean, we're kind of in the piss a little bit. That I'm totally paraphrasing the Shapiro's thing, but that was the gist of it, and it always kind of stuck with me a little bit. There's something I can't get around with that kind of conception of it, right? Like there has to be on some semblance of agreement on something, maybe within your own property, within your own fenced in, whatever, however it worked. You know what I'm saying though? But like you wouldn't want people jerking off in public.
No,
you know what I mean?
No.
So there's got to be some restraints on that aspect of it, right?
But that's the thing with freedom of association, right? That's the thing with, so let's say there's a place where like people like fucking, like, first of all, I'm never moving or living in an area where that's kind of a thing, right? That's what I mean. I prefer to move to places just like where I live today. I like to live around the kind of people I like to live around, because not just it's because of where my originally family is from, but also because the people that are around here are typically your like rural type of people who not very reliant on government for much. So they're very they would never identify as a libertarian, but they basically walk.
A lot of people don't think about these things, right? They really don't. Most, unfortunately.
Yeah. But these places, like I say, well, even now, you know, there's all kinds of jurisdictions where you can have that. But like I say, I don't understand why people do it. I guess they can enrich themselves because you get paid big money if you work in some of these downtown places. But there's not, see, that's the thing to me. That's greed will get you a certain place. And I don't begrudge people for being greedy as long as you make your money voluntarily. But I just never been so greedy that like I want to put up with all the bullshit that would come with living with downtown Toronto, even though I could get a big giant salary or something and have something to brag about.
Some people are built different, right? And it's incentive structure for them as individuals. Like Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, like the Elon Musks out there, that kind of mindset. that no matter how much you get, you still have drive for more. And it's beyond just material wealth at some level. It's a psychological profile. And it's usually men to be, it is a difference. It's usually, it's very much men that exhibit this or manifest this symptom. And that's the perpetual overworker, the workaholic, the guy that's going to work 85 hours and still take the call at 4 a.m. from the client, right? Like these are the people that will, in a capitalist society, these are the people that will rise, right? And you wouldn't want to be them. I wouldn't want to be them. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my thing. I like to read and enjoy my time. I like to think about weird things and discuss things. Like, it's not, I don't want to just hustle and grind away for no end, really, right? Because at the end, it's not just about acquisition of wealth. It's something hardwired in them.
Well, one more thing I want to do there too, and then we'll tie it up as quick or as whatever you want there, John-Paul. But this is just one more thing that I want to bring up. This one I actually will make sure is linked in the description, because this comes actually, so people, that's what I mean. Like, the reason why I use CBC and a lot of the is because I recognize Canadians, they trust these sources, right? So rather than give them information from a libertarian think tank or institute in terms of what central banks are all about and what the Canadian Central Bank is all about, well, here, just go straight on. Like I say, I'll place a link. This is right from the Bank of Canada. .ca. This is, and it's a PDF file that you can download and read at your leisure. So you don't have to. But if you actually just read the title of this particular paper, this white paper, it's Unexpected Inflation and Redistribution of Wealth in Canada. So once again, I wouldn't even give you a quick synopsis other than just reading the title, and you'll kind of get an idea of where they're going with this. But redistribution, this basically central banks, and if you just read even their releases. But most people don't. This is the thing. They listen to the pundit who interprets it for them, right? It's like, no, read that shit and you'll come to just read their own stuff. Same with in terms of the WF. I don't have to be a conspiracy theorist about anything the WF says. I'll just give you the fucking website and you can just go there yourself. Right? Like, come on. But but the Bank of Canada, just like the Central Bank of the US, the Federal Reserve, these things are part of authoritarian collectivist regimes. These are things that you would normally only ever find historically in countries that have nothing but top-down centrally planned economies, because the central bank, you control the purse, right? And when you control the purse, as a lot of people have said in the past, like you basically control society, because, as much as people like to pretend, we all function on the monetary system. Every Canadian, well, I mean, you might find the odd person that's out in the woods. I will give the exception of the guy that's out there, just got his moccasins on it in the middle of the woods. Props to him for doing it. But most of us function under the current monetary system. And it is literally, if you're young or you're poor or you're in the working class in any way and not connected, this is all a great detriment to you. And this is something younger Canadians in particular need to learn, because they're being convinced that big government and the central bank is there to help them, when in reality, it's the biggest fucking hindrance to
their being conditioned. It's not even that they're being convinced. To say convinced would mean they're provided with an alternative. Well, they're not. True, this is what you're born to look like. The government is a benevolent, all-encompassing force, and it's good. The state is good. It's fucking crazy that we're teaching. And we're not teaching them any other views than that, right? If you just took an honest look at history, you could see the danger of government. All government, absolutely all government, even benevolent leaders through history can sway towards tyranny. It's the nature, man. Like, that's why there has to be checks and balances. That's what's so brilliant about the constitutional republic of America. It's brilliant about it, is that they did write things. Now, there's been a lot of things that took from it, honestly, over the years, for sure, that could be improved upon. But I mean, the core premise of the Constitution is just, it's what we need. It's the best we've gotten thus far. That's all. You know what I mean? Like, so if Canadians have an option to get that, we should get that. It's fucking crazy that anyone wouldn't want that. Exactly. For some sense of, oh, what, you're a traitor? Go. I just got no time for that argument. Specifically? Like, why am I a traitor and why are you not a bootlicking regime apologist?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How is it not considered a traitor to sell your sovereignty or the sovereignty of your citizens to like these fucking global organizations?
That's right. That's right. And that's where we're at now.
That seems to kind of fit the description of an actual traitor rather than a Canadian. Like, to call a Canadian a traitor for simply, like I say, when I think of the countless thousands, and overall, really, in the grand scheme of things, millions of Canadians who are subjected, and we've seen them all, folks. We've seen the videos. I know a lot of people are probably trying to fucking forget about them, of how many Canadians were targeted and the amount of injustices. And like I say, the post that I read earlier, the stuff that we were confronted or how were we treated by the governments, and not just by the governments, but the fact that even our own fucking citizens were willing to fall for the goddamn lies and rhetoric that were being presented to them and rat us out. I mean, how many stories do we hear where neighbors were ratting out their neighbors for daring to have a Christmas party with their family? I mean, think about
happens. That's what always happens, though. That's what happened with the Stasi in Berlin during the Bolsheviks. You know what I mean? Like, they were policing each other. It turned out like 60% of the population were informing on the other 40%. So the majority were informants. It creates that type of a system by incentivizing that.
Yeah, but just think about the kind of the mindset of a person that's willing to, like I say, fucking just do some of the worst things possible to another human being. I mean, okay, there could be some worse things, but some pretty fucking nasty shit were done to some human beings, some peaceful people in this country. And then after they've done that to you, like I say, the kind of shit they brought on you, the violence, the imposition, the mandates, the court, do that. And then after that, they want you to come and like, oh, let's embrace. Like that, I don't give a fuck. If you've ever met an actual human being in your life, and I'm sure some of you have, that has that kind of, you thought of them at the time, it's like, are you fucking insane?
I really think they were on some level. I really do. I wrote, if you want to check on my article things, if you get a chance, it's a brief article. All my articles are usually under 1,000, 1,500 words.
I enjoy your articles tremendously.
But I wrote an article about mass formation, and it's relative to a book I read recently. And I'd recommend this book. It's called The History of Totalitarianism.
Yeah.
It's by Matthias Desmet. And he lays out mass formation psychosis. And he wrote it right after or halfway during, like towards the end part of COVID. So he's referencing that through the work. It was just an amazing book. But I tried to present a very short, brief, condensed version of what's in the novel in my article. It's worth checking out because I think they were insane. And I think lots of them still are insane. They derive such security from these narratives. It's like a blanket for them.
Yeah.
And they're terrified. And when they encounter you and you're going to shit on their narrative that they're getting security from, then you're their enemy. And they will devour you. They will do nasty things to you. And it's some kind of a thing that we've actually acknowledged societally. Like we've studied this. It's an occurrence that happens. And it's an interesting phenomena. But we should wrap here soon.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to say one last thing, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
In terms of that, actually is the insanity, like you were mentioned. But I think another thing, some of them may very well be insane, but another possibility, was it my wife I was talking to about this maybe too a little while back, but I just thought of it now, is think about how many Canadians are on, what do you call them, SSRIs or whatever the hell they are, all these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, they might not be technically insane, but
serotonin inhibiting, dopamine augmenting,
if you're on a drug that basically removes your mind from being able to experience the normal kind of emotions, which is what it's supposed to do, right? That's the whole thing, that how it's supposed to prevent you from being in a depressed state is to put you in a happy fucking place. But if you're doing things that are detrimental to other people and you're in a happy place and your brain isn't telling you that you're doing some bad fucking things, that's a serious problem. And
I think I think they're a chemical lobotomy. I think at this point, like 78 years ago, we drilled into the frontal cortex and we thought that was progress. I think now we're fucking with the dopaminergic systems that we do know some about. Like we know like serotonin and we know dopamine and receptors and all this stuff, but we're inhibiting things that we don't know enough to be fucking with. And I really think in the future, we're going to look back at this period psychologically or psychopharmacologically and think like, wow, these were the equivalent of a chemical lobotomy. And I don't think they're helping virtually anyone. I think that anyone who's getting benefit from these drugs is more of a placebo. It's like, here, I'm going to give you a salt pill and tell you it's a magic pill. It's going to make you feel better. Then people start saying, hey, well, maybe I feel a bit better. And they start, it's a trick. It's psychosomatic, right? But I think, that's a good point, man. The whole system is created, even from our educational institutions. They call it social and emotional development or critical pedagogy. A dude named Paulo Freire was like a Marxist. Like it's the Frankfurt School's critical theory influence in our curriculums. Like it's teaching us all this shit. We're being conditioned to be good serfs. Or I mean, what was it? O'Bannon called us feudal. It's a neo-feudal society where
Okay,
there's elites and there's serfs. We're
Yeah.
like Russian serfs now, right? We're just, and I go back to my analogy. We're a corporation, and we're all part of the corporation of Canada, man. And like, they're not giving us anything at this point, and we have to demand something better. And we have to demand it. We have to organize and we have to demand it, or we will never get it.
100%.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And actually, we'll just maybe just answer this, maybe try or at least attempt to answer this question to Shane Waters, and then we'll tie this one up there. JP, like I say, I've been really enjoying this one. And there's been lots of interest in the comments and stuff. So I'm glad you folks are enjoying it as well. So Shane Waters says, wonder how far or how long Canadians will just carry on letting the situation continue. Well, I tell you, that's the $64,000 question there. JP, you want to take a stab at it?
I'll tell you what I think. Every night I go to bed and I pray. And I pray that Canadians will pay attention to what's occurring and take some actions for a pragmatic solution. And every day thus far, I wake up and I'm disappointed. I don't say that in a sanctimonious way. I say that in the most genuine way I can, because this terrifies me. What our government is trying to do, I'm passionate about preventing it, because it's nothing short of subjugation. I'll use strong terminology because it's very Marxian. It's radical leftist or fascist. Like I say, both are so similar, right? Like you come around, like it's an authoritarian technocratic state that's trying to be constructed around us.
Yeah.
And that's a good question. Like I ask myself that every night, and I pray for a pragmatic solution. Thus far, though, like I say, every morning I wake up and I'm kind of disappointed, and I get back on X and I start hammering away, man. That what I have nothing else I could do presently.
Yeah.
But try to get the conversations going and try to see if we could do some grassroots organization. You know what I mean? Like not for a particular party, but for a particular mindset. Like, look, we're the citizens that are suffering. Any political party is invited. Like, let's try to get together and have some conversations. Let's try to actually find what we can get solidarity on and see where we can come together on and what we can't.
Well, hey, JP, I'll just put a teaser out there, and maybe we'll talk about this in a future live stream or something. But I was thinking, I did it one time actually, because that's one thing about in our Atlantic provinces, and it's probably the same where you are, although you might be in a bigger city. But if you're any in the outskirts or the suburbs stuff, and you have like, whether it's a Lions Club or the Legion or the Rec Center or whatever, like over here, like we have a rec center just up the road here, or just, I don't know, what's 3 houses down, and you can rent it for $50 for the afternoon. I did it a couple times, but small community, not very much traction at the time. I'd be more than willing to do it again. But I'm thinking, like you're saying, rather than like make it all about parties or this, I called it Liberty Lessons, right? I just LL come up with a little design Liberty. And why can't we just in each of our jurisdictions across Canada, just, rather than, because I know churches used to be the place where a lot of people would congregate, but a lot of people aren't really religious in that way. But I would say if you are in that community, that's a great place too. But maybe for the people who aren't, connected to churches or religions, like I say, maybe rent in your local community, something like a rec center or somewhere, and advertise it on your social media.
Responsible citizenry. That's what we got to get back to. I read a book recently by Victor David Hansen called The Dying Citizen. It was a great book, man. Yeah, he's a military historian, Ivy League educated, super articulate man. Yeah. But he lays down the case for citizenship, how rare of a thing it is to have self-governance, and how we're neglecting our responsibilities. We're not just neglecting them. There's nefarious things like the media is working against us. That's a big problem. Because then if you're a truth teller, you got to get past people that just believe the media. It's like, dude, that's pure propaganda. Oh yeah, you're crazy. You know better than the CBC. You hear it all the time, right? It's like, come on, dude. How do you can't even touch someone like that, because they've already made their mind up. They believe the authority of this news outlet, and it doesn't matter what you say. That's God to them. Yeah, that has the final say, right? So it's hard to even have a productive discourse with someone like that, right?
Well, that's the thing, and actually, that's the area where I think we might have a little bit more success. So now that you're talking about that, online, and there are some people, but they're the ones that usually don't actually interact and engage. They just kind of observe, right? So we don't know how many people. There's probably lots of people actually, John-Paul, that we're both affecting very positively. They're just maybe a little shy to communicate, just kind of, absorbing and observing things. Whereas if you do something like what we're talking about, where do something in your communities, this way we're trying to reach the people that we don't know if they're even conducive with, even want to hear a damn thing we're saying, right? So sometimes we might be wasting our time, although I don't feel that. But I will say, if you do things like what we're suggesting, do things in your community and get together in person, for one, the people that show up are going to show up and have obviously the intention of either because they're curious, they want to learn things. So you're already halfway there with the kind of people that are going to want to participate you. And once you're doing it in person, that, like I say, when we deal with each other in person, I find every example in my life,
Everyone's better.
yeah, they treat each other with much more dignity and
Yep.
much better. Exactly. Yeah.
There's not the separation, right? There's everyone knows, and we know how to communicate with one another. We've been doing it for thousands of years.
Yep.
I mean, it's as simple as that. We know what's too far, what's rude, what's out of bounds, what's a healthy way to disagree. And you lose that through the anonymity of social media a lot. And it's a shame. But I said the majority of people don't want a productive discourse. They want to dunk on you. They want to get a word in and look smart because it's the whole thing is an endeavor of the ego for them. They're trying to validate themselves as some kind of great thinker. It's like, dude, we're a bunch of serfs. We're being shit on by the government. Let's find some solidarity and push back. That's where I'm at.
Right on. Well, this was great, JP. Actually, this is perfect. Actually, 2:29, so basically 2.5 hours. This was an awesome live stream. We covered a lot of subject matter.
I like the free form nature of it. That's why I like a broad topic, because I don't like to get pigeonholed, and because then it gets tedious talking about things. I like to because then we can go wherever we want, right? It's wide open.
I'm the same way. Besides, as you know, as a libertarian, I don't like too many rules. Few, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's very in line with your philosophy.
Right on, buddy. All right, man. Well, like I say, we've had a great chat today. And once again, anytime you want to talk about anything, I'm always willing to engage. And once again, it was great that the fact we actually tested the waters here a little bit to confirm that, we're both legit and we both have the right intentions. Because as you can see, we had a little small disagreement, but it got right back in
we can agree to disagree, right? It's like I said, we can have uniformity, or we can have unity without uniformity.
Hell yeah. I wouldn't want everyone to be like me anyways.
That would be weird. It would be weird if you met someone and you were talking about whatever and they just entirely lined up with you. You would think they were fucking with you. You'd be like, no way, dude.
Right on. All right, buddy. Well, like I say, if there's anything you want to shout out, or
I'll throw down my I'm exclusive on X. If anyone in your community wants to find me, it's Semper Veritas X on X.
And I definitely recommend following JP's. Awesome.
Yeah, lots of posts, lots of articles. I'm just branching in. I'm very new to this, man. I've done this like 3 or 4 times. I've done a few spaces. So once I figure out, I'm actually gonna get in touch with you privately. I want some tips on how you're running your operation.
Oh yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah.
But no, for sure. I look forward to talking again, man, and continuing the discourse.
Excellent. Right on. Well, like I say, have a great rest of the day. What's today? Tuesday or whatever, I guess. Yeah,
Tuesday. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and when the weekend finally gets here, have a good weekend. And same with all the folks in the live chat. I will just mention before we go, I have that chat with Bruce Party on the 26th. I believe that's at 1 p.m. my time as well. I'll actually share all that stuff a little bit later on. But I'm going to have that chat with Bruce Party, and I'm really looking forward to that one. And then, like I say, I'm going to be setting up some other conversations a little bit later on. But I got a couple dentist appointments coming right up soon. So I
I had one today.
Yeah, that sucks. Well, that's my thing. I'm hoping it's like after I get done, well, especially the second ones, hopefully I can, because I have a live stream. I think probably be set up a couple days after that. So hopefully I'll be able to talk.
I was waiting for my face to come back. It was numb before this. I wasn't thinking, fuck.
All right, dude. All right. Have a good one. Like you say, if you want JP, you can always not just share this stuff, but if you want to download a copy, I think you'll be able to get that option once we go offline as well.
Sure.
All right, everyone. Have yourself a good day. This is Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.